Good morning. This is the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals Public Review Session for January 27th, 2020. We'll begin with the appeals calendar decision items. Item number 1, 2019-94A2, 36 West 66th Street, Manhattan.
Madam Chair, I must recuse myself.
Have you done the microphone on?
Your mic's not on.
Your mic.
I believe it is on.
Oh, it is. Yeah, it doesn't have the red cap this way.
Okay. So with this one, the vote is tomorrow, so we can just hold off on comments until the actual vote. If you have comments, you can give them at the time of the vote, okay?
Okay. Okay? Mm-hmm. Come back, please. Special order calendar, item number 2, 38985BZ, 2090 Bronxdale Avenue, the Bronx.
Okay.
Submission was made.
Right, so the applicant has revised the plans. They have dimensioned the planting beds as we had asked them to do so, and have provided the details of the planting type. Though I don't think the lumen plan has been revised. This is a question, Commissioner Brown, you had last time, that the lumen reading was still high along Bradley Avenue. I don't think that plan has been revised, but we had also said at the last hearing that the applicant needs to improve the asphalting and paint before we approve it. So maybe we ask them to go ahead and do that. Meanwhile, they can revise the lumen plan between today and tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Any other comments?
Item number 3, 42929BZ, 4801 Kings Highway, Brooklyn.
Okay. So, as we know, this plan was being reviewed by DOT, and DOT has reviewed the plan and has asked for revisions to the plan, which the applicant has done, and DOT has signed off on it. Basically, the major change is that DOT is recommending 2 sets of curb cuts, both entry and exit, one being on Kings Highway and the other one being on East 48th Street, with conditions, and the conditions are that all the additional curb cuts that are, the existing curb cuts that are there, especially on like Avenue H and a couple of them on Kings Highway, be all removed, and that all tanker trucks egress from the site shall only be from Kings Highway Service Road, and a flagger shall be used to help safely accommodate the ingress and the egress movement of a tanker truck, and that all sidewalks, instruments, like all other sidewalk fixtures like fire hydrants and trees shall be located at least 7 feet from the outside edge of all curb cuts placed. My question to that is, especially with regards to the prohibition that DOT has is recommending for the tanker truck, is that tanker truck do not exit from East 48th Street, and we know that's a residential street. So my question is, should a sign be provided or some notification that notifies the tanker truck that they can only use Kings Highway for ingress and egress, and not egress onto 48th Street?
And how does the flagger? How is there some kind of announcement that the tanker truck is not allowed to egress without a flagger?
Right. So how would the exactly? How would the tanker truck driver be notified that they need a flagger to help them get into the site and off the site? So I think it's more of an operational plan. So if the applicant can provide something, that would be to help us understand how that would be done.
Isn't there some sort of? Oh, if the flagger is needed because making the turn means back up, turn your steering wheel this way, that way, this way.
Yeah.
So there's no way you can automate that kind of instruction.
Was the way to, notify the company that comes to the site that that they're truckers, they're people?
You're right. I think there generally is one company, right, that
Right, is there
typically
one
will be
truck
providing,
company that
so
comes?
that they can, it's just then they need to make that understanding, need to have that understanding with the service provider. And generally, these tanker trucks are arriving mostly in the
if it's onerous
morning or
then. Is it
evening,
too
not
onerous?
during the rush hours.
I see the look in your- is it too onerous?
How that's implementable.
Yeah, is that
just,
onerous
you
because
know-
it's one site?
Yeah, it's one site and it's catch as catch can, because I don't think these guys have scheduled arrival and departure. It's like, they get there when they're, you know,
Done with
in
the
their
last
route
one,
of
yeah.
people who they're delivering oil to. You could be
Mm-hmm.
first, you could be last, it could be changed at the last minute if there's traffic
Mm-hmm.
going to this site and then they run out of oil or whatever. I just don't understand, like, you could see them on the site and go, okay, come now, but
No, but can the flagger be just somebody who works at the
Yeah, is
station?
it
That's what I'm
possible?
assuming.
It's
it
not a
would be.
professional, I don't know,
Right.
contracted flagger, isn't it
Oh,
just a
okay.
guy at the station?
Yeah.
It could be.
And, sorry, and then maybe a phone call from the truck driver to the guy at the station, you know, I'm 4 blocks away, so at least they are aware that they're coming?
I mean,
Something like
okay,
that?
but then that's not a flagger.
Oh,
You know, that's just asking an employee at the station to wave you in and wave
Yeah.
you out and
Yeah.
hope that that employee has some kind of loyalty or allegiance to the owner of the site or the operator of the site and cares.
yeah.
You know, and wants to take on that responsibility.
Yeah, we can ask that it be part of their operational plan, that they have a flag, or they have someone in their staff operate in that capacity.
No, but that's what we were just talking
Right.
about. So if there's an official person that's called a flagger, then that's, obviously, it's a full-time person, because unless you know that you're only getting deliveries on alternate Wednesdays, where you set up some sort of contract, something like that, unless it's a really known schedule, then it can't be an official flagger person. It has to be the guy who pumps gas or who gives you change at the convenience store kind of thing, right?
Right, who's often the only guy in the store.
Exactly.
So
And-
he's gonna have to
Well, they,
put a closed for operations sign out there, come on out there and be like, all right, turn the wheel, turn to the
The-
right. It just doesn't seem like it. And what's gonna happen if he doesn't do it?
Yeah.
If he's like, I'm not doing it today, it's cold, it's rainy.
I
Who's
just,
gonna make sure it's done?
Yeah. So I guess the question is, if DOT is okay with this location, then that's the first time we've ever heard about
have
flaggers.
yeah,
Is this
that is
like,
true.
I know that they're concerned because of the school safety issues, and so now curb cuts are like a big focus in kind of recent months, or maybe the last couple of year or so. And maybe the question we should be directing to DOT, there isn't, how could this possibly be instituted? Is there a way to design the approach or the curb cut so that it doesn't make such a sharp turn that needs a person, a pilot, basically?
Because isn't it also DOT's position that we don't want human solutions, but
Yeah.
mechanical ones? And this
Right.
kind of flies in the face of that. I think we need to have a conversation with DOT.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's fair.
I also think we
So-
should keep in mind that the community board wanted that 48th Street entrance to be closed.
So they wanted it to be closed, but the question is, how do you get the tanker truck
Right.
in with any degree of safety? If DOT is saying it's not safe unless there's a person directing traffic, and there isn't any mechanism for a person to direct traffic on a, you know, with the schools, which DOT also doesn't really like, at least the schools we know pretty much does have those crossing guards, right? Because for one, there's like a PTA or something, and the parents would be screaming and saying, well, what happened to the crossing guards? They were there at the beginning, right? But in this situation, there's nobody to monitor it, to follow up on it. Yeah.
And it's also more standardized in a school, because there is a standard arrival and dismissal time. It's not like you're saying, I want a crossing guard to just hang out on the corner for 7 straight hours for that stray student who's walking in late. You're not saying that.
Right.
just in terms of I went back to the original statement of fact in terms of how they propose to man or person the facility, and it seems there will be 5 employees in the morning shift, 4 in the afternoon and 3 at night. What was not clear to me is, are these 5 employees that were listed, are these only dedicated to the gasoline station, or are they, it's a combined one for both the convenience store and the gasoline station? So I think we need a little bit of a breakdown. If they have 5 and they can afford to have one person always looking out and making sure when the truck comes, start, I don't know if you need a proper training, and what kind of guidance, those are some of the
These are tanker
questions.
trucks, those are professional drivers that do this. The idea that, I always use me as the equivalent. I'm hired at the convenience store to like sell soda. I don't even drive a car.
I believe the people who manage the operation at the station are totally separate from the people who work for the convenience store. Most of the time, when you go to a gas station, the guy who's renting the convenience store and taking care of the operation is totally different from the guy who's managing the gas selling operation.
You're right. It's just that in the statement, it gave a total number. What I'm not sure if that total number was, it gave a number. What to me was not clear if that is just dedicated for the gasoline, or is it the total for the entire facility?
No, it's the
So-
entire facility.
That's what I think it
It's the
is.
store
Yeah.
as well, and the drive-through for the food establishment. It's, because
Yeah.
you don't need that many, this is not a full-serve gasoline station, it's self-serve, so you really
Yeah.
don't need 5 people hanging
That is
around.
true.
There's no
Yeah.
use for them.
You actually just need one person
One
who
person.
tinkers around with the equipment in case there's a failure, or puts the out of order sign on it and makes a phone call, right?
Right.
So, you don't even wash your windows.
You know a lot about gasoline,
I'm
even though
always-
you don't drive.
I sit in the passenger seat and I watch others. Okay. So I do think it's a good idea for us to reach out to DOT, because if flaggers are starting to become a solution for them, this is not going to work out for us.
I don't think it's going to work out for any commercial establishments with parking.
Right,
Yeah.
parking
In the city,
with a curb
period.
cut.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. Okay.
okay, right.
All right. Okay, item number 3, 41850BZ, 7369 207th Street, 7336 Springfield Boulevard, 21902 74th Avenue, and 7310 220th Street, Queens. There were several submissions in response to our queries.
Right.
This is item number 4, not 3, right?
4, did I say 3?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I
It used to be
apologize.
3.
4,
Yeah.
it's 4.
It was 3 before.
It was originally 2, but who's that?
At the September 2019 hearing, we had asked the Windsor Oak to provide a signed contract with a landscape company and a proposal to improve the buffer zone. The new board of Windsor Oak has signed a contract with the new landscape company, and the company has submitted a proposal for the green space, which was submitted to us, and the board has accepted that proposal. And I think a letter was submitted on Friday by the board of Windsor Oak stating that they have accepted the proposal and that they have sufficient fund to conduct the work. I want to say that, and just as part of the proposal, it will have a lot of trees, shrubs. I don't know if you want me to go into the details, perennial flowers and grass. So there's quite a bit of detail that is included in there with providing variety of greening material. And the project will commence once, of course, the weather is favorable. We know typically that tends to be in spring onwards. I want to note that the management of Windsor Oak and the new board of directors, they have been very responsive, and they've been working towards improving the green space in good faith ever since this hearing started. And to date, they have cleared the buffer zone, removed the debris, dead material. They've also started doing some vegetation and to provide some greening in the greenbelt area. They have they had entered into a contract to install the fence, but they were waiting for the greenery to have happened before. And so the last piece of the puzzle was to have a contract with the landscape, on which they have done. So I really want to thank the board for to work with us and kind of hear the comments of the community and the board and respond to them in a very timely manner. And I wish them well in completing this work. And only thing I want to say is that you know, I would recommend that we approve this tomorrow. My only thing was be that this was a compliance hearing, so I would recommend that we close the hearing, compliance hearing. But we do have a compliance monitor, so they may go and check to see the progress that is being made. And I'm sure this board of Windsor Oak is very much aware of what it takes to be in compliance, and they do not want to go through that. So.
Right.
That would be.
And the community knows that they can easily request a compliance
Yes.
hearing if they don't
Yeah.
implement the plan.
Item number 5, 75160BZ, 105 New Dorp Lane, Staten Island.
So the applicant has revised the proposed plan where they have indicated the materials specifications we had asked for the building, for the fence. They have also provided the details for the landscaping plan, have revised the lumen plan, and I've also shown the maneuverability plan showing how the enlarged portion of the building will be accessed. I just want to say as part of that, it seems one of the 8 parking spaces will be affected in the maneuverability, but since most of these parking spaces are going to be used for vehicles to be staged, awaiting repair, people within the facility will be constantly moving vehicles in and out, so I'm okay with that. The applicant has revised the statement of fact, and we have a letter from fire department dated 1/25th stating that fire department has no objection to the amended plan.
I had a similar comment regarding the maneuverability. I believe it's not just one parking spot, it might be 2, because if you look at the last parking spot close to New Drop Lane, it's kind of blocking the curb cut, the exit, so it might be 2, but like you said, yeah, if these parking spots are used for cars awaiting service, they could be
Right.
moved around, yeah, they can juggle and move them around,
Yeah.
yes.
Item number 6, 2017-216BZ, 411 Wales Avenue, the Bronx.
Okay, just give me a second. So we had asked the applicant to provide the TCO. They have provided it. The new one is going to expire in February of '21. They have also provided a revised statement of findings and an analysis, a travel demand analysis with the proposed incubator school on the second floor. As I think our concern at the last hearing was that the grades on the second floor were intended to be middle school and high school, which means there will be more pedestrian traffic and less auto traffic, and that is to be replaced. The applicant is proposing to replace that with the cohort of kindergartens, first grade, followed by second and sixth grade. So our concern was that kindergarten and first grade kids generally would need to be either walked or be dropped off, so there will be more pedestrian and vehicular traffic, and that needed to be analyzed, and that's what the applicant has provided the analysis. They used the modal split from 3 of the existing dream schools that are located in East Harlem to show how the children in these schools come. Typically, Dream School does not use school bus. Their program is to have parents or caregivers drop the children off, either walking or cars. And the 3 schools in Harlem shows that most of the children come by walking, followed by I think metro, and then last by bus, last by cars. So I'm okay with the similarity that of this side to the Harlem side, because this, even though the subject site is in the IBC, it's in the IBC, it's on the edge of the IBC, which is surrounded by residential, so, and there are other schools in the area, so the proximity of the other schools and the residential, the flow of, most of the pedestrian flow or vehicular flow will be coming from the residential side and not from the IBZ, so the conflict of movement between the industrial uses and the residential will be minimum, since it's at the edge. I did have one question, and that is, I went back to my earlier notes from the 2018 hearing, and in that the modal split was analyzed as 15% private cars, and I think at the last hearing, we were told it's 20%, so I would just like some clarification. We were told.
So this time the split was 15%?
Last time it was 15%, right now, and we were told now it's 20%. That's what the Brownsville EIS has. And last time also Brownsville EIS was used, but that was, as part of it was 15%. Maybe my note is wrong. I was looking at my notes, so if they could clarify that, that would be helpful. And the projected number of kids for school year 2019 to 2020 was 130 when we had analyzed in 2018, and the existing condition is 388 on site, with the I think the academy being one of the incubator schools. Same thing with all the other projected school years. The projected number is more than what we had projected in the 2018. So I just want to understand, did we analyze the full build out of NSC only and did not factor in the incubator school before the full build out? Because in my notes it was not clear, and I do not have the statement of fact from the previous.
Didn't we analyze at full enrollment, not at year 2018, 2019, but at full enrollment?
Okay.
Yeah, when all the grades were actually in existence.
Okay, so we did.
But assuming that the full enrollment is that matches, right?
Right, but it doesn't. I mean, the
Yeah.
full enrollment doesn't match the enrollment right now between the the school on the first floor and the elementary grades that are going to be on the second floor. There's definitely like a doubling of elementary school children.
Right.
So that's the difference, but we did analyze a full.
Right.
And,
So it's
you
just
know-
different modal splits in the end, because
Right.
you have high school kids who are walking on their own, or busing, taking the public transit on their own. And the representation here that they don't use buses for the lower school.
Right, Dream Academy does not use yellow school bus, but NSC does.
I mean,
NCS.
the only thing I can say is, having driven there a few times, the last time and this time, it is not very high trafficked, this area. There aren't that many cars or trucks on the streets directly around this school. So even if they were a little off on their estimate and there are more people who are going to use private cars, I don't know that it's going to negatively impact this area, because it really is pretty dead at the moment. Even with the school in session, it's pretty dead.
So the submitted tech memo was a result of a conference call we had in December. BSA and DOT, school safety seeker, we had a call. And then that's what resulted in the tech memo, which is currently under review by DOT.
Oh, it still hasn't finished its review.
So the assumptions they made, actually, they got around with the issue that we talked about last hearing with an assumption, which indicated that they assumed that the incubation population, that generation or the need for the parking and the traffic demand for this population is going to be similar to a higher grade kids. Like, these kids are in elementary school, but the traffic generation from this population is going to be similar to a high school kids. The reason they said that is because of two things. Number one, Dream doesn't provide DOE buses. And number two, they said most of the kids, they live around or close to the school. I believe this is an assumption that we should be careful about it. If they are sure about this assumption, they should have not said, it is anticipated. That's what they said in their submission. Dream doesn't offer DOE yellow buses, and it is anticipated that students will arrive and depart to the school predominantly on foot. If they are sure about this assumption, if they based it on something, let's get this something. Like if they are sure about where the student live.
They did.
They can put this on a map, and they get us this map, and we can just keep this map in our record, and even send it to the DOT, so it's gonna help them looking at
So
the
you're
submission.
saying you didn't see in the materials support for the position that they don't use school buses and that the kids live within some nearby catchment area?
I took it as an assumption from their side, and that's what they said.
But they did talk about their catchment area being 1 block away,
Right.
basically.
Right.
And they did talk about what they do know as fact, which is that the East Harlem School has like a scatter diagram of students showing that the large majority, maybe 90%, are clustered around the school. And that's what they anticipate this time. I don't know that charter schools generally will change their whole operating assumptions in such a major way, like to say, okay, now we're going to get school students only from Riverdale, 3-5 miles away. I think generally that they provide a service that's similar to the service that they provide in the other sites. That, you know, they're like, oh, now we want another site, and we want to serve children that are surrounding that neighborhood.
Proximate to.
Yeah, that site.
But, and, you know, the other part of this is, it's not so dissimilar from when we look at houses of worship, right? Where the house of worship already has a small congregation, and then they have this projection that once they're built, the congregation will double or something like that. And then they project that it will be from the same neighborhood.
Yes.
But you can't know that, and when they give us those maps to show that the congregation currently lives walking distance from the site, we have to kind of interpolate that and say, makes sense that if all these people are within 3/4 of a mile, the new congregants will also be, just because how convenience and word of mouth work. So if the school already has a certain number, an enrollment, which it does, right, then it's not unreasonable, and they know that current enrollment is drawing from the catchment area of walking distance, then it's not unreasonable for them to anticipate that when they have more room, they'll be tapping into the same catchment area, as opposed to advertising, you know, in a completely other neighborhood, that we offer some special service. Because of course there are charter schools that are very specialized, and that they function as magnets, and kids will come from all over the city for them. That doesn't seem to be their, as Commissioner Ali Brown said, their working model. This is a neighborhood school.
And
What's
most
also
of the
comforting-
charter schools give preference to the district, the school
Yeah.
district they're in. That's the whole thing. They have a lottery system, and the young people who are within the district, those are the primary ones. They're the ones who have the emphasis put on them getting possible acceptance to attend that
And
school.
isn't that
What's-
also what gives them all the approvals or what do we get the?
The
Government
certification, so that they're
certification.
permitted to function?
Yeah.
No, because they could also say, we're a charter school, like we had one, that teaches music to kids. So now we are going to be tapping into, we're going to be like a magnet, and parents who want their kids to study music will travel great distances to send their kids.
What's
But
also
it's
particularly
usually
comforting
in your
about,
charter what you do.
Right,
You know,
in
and
the
it's
charter.
not likely you're going to change your charter.
Right.
You may add locations, but your charter.
Your mandate is that.
Yeah, it stays the same.
Right, that's-
what's particularly comforting for me is that the observation that this is a low-traffic area to begin with. The reality of this particular location puts me at ease, even though, puts me at ease to most of the concerns with regard to pedestrian or traffic at this location.
Move on? New cases, item number 7, 40682BZ, 2411 86th Street, Brooklyn.
Okay, so we do have proof of initial filing to the community board elected officials and also proof of notice of hearing. Community board has voted to approve the project with modifications, or actually more like conditions. And the conditions are sound from the speakers not to exceed 7 decibel over ambient sound or maximum 30 dBA. And enclose the trash compact parking lot will be gated off when the restaurant is closed, and drive-through to close at 11 a.m. 11 p.m. I'm sorry, I typo on my part. As you know, this project was before us. Is this the one? No. Does it have a history?
Yeah.
Yep. 82, right. So this is just an extension of term. There is no change in the operation. I'm getting confused with the other one that's coming up. So this is an extension of term, no change in operation. And they did provide the sound measure from the menu board. It wasn't clear to me what the hours of operation from the statement, so if they could clarify that. Based on my site visit, I would say the site is really kept in good condition. It's clean. The signage seemed to be fine, the foliage green, and I did see the trash behind an enclosed structure, which is in good shape.
Any other comments?
There's actually a banner on the fence, and I just want to know that it's actually included in the signage calculations. And they say the parking lot is actually chained off after hours. Could they just show us a photo of that so we could just see that in effect? And I have that the hours are Sunday through Thursday, 6 a.m. to midnight, Friday and Saturday, 6 a.m. to 1 a.m. But my question is that just for the restaurant and the drive-through, or just the restaurant?
Okay, so need to clarify the
Yeah, so
breakdown.
if they could clarify it, that would be great.
I just want to note that the community board asked that the drive-through closes at 11 p.m.
Yeah.
Right.
Speak up into the mic.
Sorry, that the community board requested that their conditional approval included that the drive-through closes at 11 p.m., that the parking lot will be gated off when the restaurant is closed, that the applicant will enclose their trash, and Commissioner Champa stated that she's witnessed that at a site visit, that they're
The trash is in an enclosure.
Yeah.
and that the speakers do not exceed 7 decibels over ambient sound.
Did the sound visits, did the sound measurements verify that it's not exceeding 7 decibels over ambient? We don't know.
They're saying it's 30.
It's, yeah.
30 dBA or less on the
Okay.
residential boundary line, but that's with the ABC on and operational.
Okay.
And 30 would be the
Well below the,
that's what they consider that's what the community board requested be the maximum.
And I think this may have been in their previous conditions also, so it's kind of a carryover of the conditions from previous ones.
Move on? Item number 8, 6796BZ, 210 East 86th Street, Manhattan. We have to postpone this, they didn't do the notice of hearing. Item number 9, 24708BZ, 3454 Nostrand Avenue, Brooklyn.
So we do have proof of initial filing to the community boards and elected officials, and also proof of notice of hearing. Community board has voted to approve the project. It was a unanimous approval. This is the one back in 2018, we had approved an extension of term. The site had, and the proposal is to extend the term of the variance and also amend to change the operator to Starbucks from Popeyes.
Popeyes, yeah.
Popeyes. So there's no chance, I'm sorry. There is no change is being proposed to the physical layout of the site or the hours of operation, both for the restaurant and for the drive-through. However, I did not see a lumen plan. And at the 2018 hearing, board had expressed concerns about the existing landscaping and had asked for dense, I'm quoting, dense planting of 4-foot-high shrubs for the entire area by landscaping in the front of the decorative fence. And the existing pines are not in good conditions. That's what we had stated. And that still holds true based on my site visit. So they do need to improve that with the new operator. And the signage, they did not provide a signage analysis for each frontage, so that needs to be provided. Those were my comments.
It appears as if they're currently closed and are changing over right now, from what I saw.
I saw somebody there, maybe.
There could be workers there, but
Okay,
it seems to
okay.
me that they're in the process of shifting over. I'm not sure. They should address that. They should show the number of reservoir spaces on the plans, because there are 10. And they probably should show the distance from the menu board to the nearest home on the plans, along with the sound dispersal diagram.
Yeah, I just want to add, I was wondering if the board was satisfied with the letter from the sound technician in and of itself to satisfy these, because there is, across from the menu board is a residence. So I'd like to I'd like to have an actual sound attenuation.
You, speak up, you'd like to have a sound what?
I'd like to have a sound study on this
Yeah.
property.
Yeah, the residential is very close, and actually, looking at the pictures that they submitted on November 29, 2018, photo number 2 shows that there are lighting fixtures attached to the building, and they shed light towards the residential property line, so I'm not sure what is the impact of that on the lighting, and in addition to the sound issue, of course. They said they are using 6 feet high STC 32 panel fence, but I'm not sure what is the effectiveness of this fence to reduce noise, especially if the menu board is that close to that fence, and the rear yards of the adjacent residentials is right adjacent, so. And the letter from the technician it's not really that clear, so I did read it 2-3 times, but I wasn't able to understand what is the content of the letter.
Yeah, and it's just not a sound study.
I actually stand corrected with regards to the hours of operation. I did have a comment. The proposed hours of operation for the restaurant is from 10 a.m. to 12 a.m. Sunday through Thursday, and 10 a.m. to 1 a.m. Friday and Saturday. Whereas the drive-through is 10 a.m. to 1 a.m. Sunday through Thursday, and 10 a.m. to 2 a.m. Friday and Saturday. So the drive-through is longer than the hours of operation for the restaurant.
But Starbucks?
Yeah, I know that.
I find it so unusual that Starbucks is
yes.
open at 2 a.m. because they generally close by 9 p.m., 10
That's a
p.m.
lot of
It is.
insomniacs.
Yeah, unless they're on a highway, like you'll find in Jersey, but the majority of
I
Starbucks
agree
is
with you. So I
closed.
was a little surprised to see the hours of operation, especially for the drive-through also being so, extending beyond the restaurant time. So I would like the applicant to clarify that. We typically see the drive-through hours ending before the restaurant hours.
And that's very late, there's no reason for.
There is no
drive-through
reason
to be that
for
late,
this, right.
especially
For
a
coffee?
For coffee.
Coffee and donuts.
No donuts,
They don't
not
do
Starbucks.
Like croissants.
Elegant,
Yeah,
little elegant
cheese
things.
plates.
Okay, well, if they're donuts, they're high-end donuts. Okay.
Also, in the statement of facts, there is a typo when they talk about the previous grant, 247-08. They mentioned that this is May 15, 2018. I believe it's May 15, 2014, not 18. So that needs to be fixed.
I think, with respect to the sound study, we talked about this with another applicant where it was very close to a resident, and we asked them to do sort of a sectional study, because in this case, the fence is 6 feet. So that's great if the sound is actually blocked by the 6-foot fence, but if the sound is indicating that it's going higher than the 6-foot fence,
Yes.
and then potentially into the windows
And there
of
are
the house
second-story
next door,
windows.
then it's not a high enough fence, so there needs to be some adjustment to the menu board so that it doesn't allow that high projection. Because we also talked about how we're not sure that you can do make a fence higher than 6 feet, but you can plant greenery that grows much higher, so you could plant, certain kinds of shrubs that go to 8 feet, and that will have some effect, but it's not 100%.
You could also move the trajectory of the speaker to be facing down.
Yeah.
Right, there's no reason that it goes up like that, you just need to reach the car, right?
The SUV is
So-
only this high, it's not that high.
Yeah, right.
Move on? Appeals calendar, continued hearing items. Item number 10, 2018-102A, 241 Grand Street. This is being adjourned.
Bless you.
Item number 11, 2018-151A, 6-05, 129th Street, Queens. I'm still waiting for DOT response to the submission that they made. There was a January 9th letter the applicant submitted. I sent it to DOT.
So
Which one is being adjourned? Grand Street?
I'm sorry,
Grant is
Grand
being
Street.
adjourned.
I apologize.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry, I was in the wrong place. Okay, go ahead.
So this one we're discussing is 2018-151A, 6-05, 129th Street, Queens.
I just want to note that at the latest submission, the applicant has submitted a title report for that easement that we had questioned, and that easement is to Con Ed. I just would like the applicant to provide a little bit of clarity as to what the easement entitles, and is it still applicable? And what portion, if they can diagrammatically show it in the plan as to what portion of the site this easement is, if in effect, is still, is the area. Just kind of show that. It's difficult to kind of look through the text and try to overlay it onto the
This is my pet
plans.
peeve on all those kinds of submissions. We're not going to plot your easement. You have to do it for us, because the meets and bounds, they talk about degrees and things like that. We can't figure out what those things are.
Yeah,
That's
and-
for a surveyor to do.
Right. And also, like I said, it's not clear whether that easement is still valid.
Right.
And if it's not, please state that. I'm not an expert at reading these title search documents, so I really
right.
could not
And
find
if it's not valid, then why are we being provided with the easement? And has someone pursued the validity? And if it is valid, what's the relevance to this project? Right.
There's also a statement about this, their unwillingness to have this reviewed by city planning, because it's not something, their statement was that it's not something that's likely reviewed by city planning. If there's something in writing to that effect,
So city planning unwilling to look at it.
yeah, that's what they stated. Well, no, they stated that the project, there's no intention to have it reviewed by city planning, to ask for it to be reviewed by city planning.
Because there isn't any action that is triggering city planning review, unlike the ones in Staten Island that are in the special district. Also, this site, this area does not fall in any special districts that would require any city planning commission certification. Maybe that's what they're alluding to?
Yeah.
That might be it.
But
I'd
as
like them to
opposed
hear
to
it, you
them
know?
just saying, we're not doing it.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
that's what they're saying.
Move on? Item number 12, 2018-178A, 2 Oak Tree Way, Staten Island.
I think this project is in somewhat of a limbo because we're going back and forth as trying to determine whether DCP needs to review this. The application is before city planning for the SSR, for it being in the South Richmond Special District. And so that's where we stand on this.
Yeah, so it's not really an open issue. We're clear on this position. City planning has to do its job and tell us what its decision is. We don't make decisions on these cases prior to city planning doing its work.
And we're still, just FYI, waiting for fire department. Item number 13, 2019-166A, 8 Madigan Place, Staten Island. The application has been requested to be withdrawn. New cases, item number 14, 2019-69A, 2019-70A, Mallory Avenue, Staten Island. This application is postponed. They failed to do notice of hearing. Zoning calendar. Am I going too fast?
No.
Zoning calendar, continued hearing items, item number 15, 2017-21BZ. This application's been adjourned. Item number 16, 2018-27BZ, 16 Dover Street, Brooklyn, adjourned. Item number 17, 2018-137BZ, 25177 Jericho Turnpike, Queens, adjourned. Item number 18, 2018-145BZ, 25173 Jericho Turnpike is also adjourned. Item number 19, 2018-171BZ, 1 East 70th Street, Manhattan. It's the Frick.
Okay, this one is also being adjourned.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. My back is just...
Open environmental issue.
Item number 20, 2018-172BZ, 46-09, 4619, 31st Avenue, Queens. A submission was made.
So at the last hearing, we had asked the applicant to look at reconfiguring the floor plan and pull the building back from the rear lot line and see if it could be built over the easement, the shared driveway easement, without losing any of the units. And the applicant has done that. And it does result in a better unit layout, which was one of our concerns. And also it provides a side yard. But it also results in an additional waiver. And we were open to that at the hearing. And the waiver would be to allow a legally required window to face a 12-foot, 4-inch wide side yard along the rear lot line. We had heard there was a fair number of community concern about the shadow that the project was going to cast, and I think that was also another reason we had asked the applicant to pull the building back from the rear lot side lot line, because it's a corner lot, so it's not a rear lot line. And the applicant has provided a shadow analysis, and it just shows that the largest increment of the shadow is during the winter afternoon, and which we know is the situation in all cases. Though they did not provide an as-of-right scenario, a community facility which would be basically you could build all the way to the rear lot line up to a height of 23 feet. They verbally have, the narrative just states that if an as-of-right community facility were to be permitted, then the shadow increment, the increment of the proposed development would be even less. And I agree with that.
The shadow
The incremental shadow, the
would have been
increment.
more.
There'll be more.
No, the incremental shadow of the proposed development
Is less than the
than-
as of right.
right.
Yeah.
Right. And I agree with that.
Okay.
So I'm satisfied with the revised plan, and the shadow analysis does show that the incremental shadow for the proposed plan would be minimal, and the additional waiver that is being requested is in response to the community and the board's comments to reduce the bulk along the rear side lot
So
line.
question, with respect to that additional waiver, is it already effectively mentioned in the DOB?
No, that is not.
Because if they cited to very many sections in the zoning resolution,
Right.
open space, 23,142, 2345 for front yards, side yards, 2435 for side yards, 23,631D. So anyway, you don't need to investigate it, but we need to make sure that we already have a DOB objection mentioning the correct section in the zoning resolution, which they may already have because often
I did
it
not check.
overlaps, right?
And I'll double check the EAS
Yeah.
as well.
You're right.
Do we have a sign off from the fire department on this?
Say it again?
A sign off from the fire department. We got letter of objection, I believe, before.
Just double check.
Have any notes?
That was September 23rd.
I thought we did that.
And I'm satisfied with the E-finding, because they're already so far under the HPD loan guideline minimum count, and they are also in line with the HPD design guidelines for supportive housing. So I'm convinced that they couldn't make the building any smaller.
I don't have it.
So it's unit count and also what? The HPD guidelines for?
Guidelines for supportive housing, like the minimum size of
Yeah.
each unit and the support spaces in the common area and all of that.
Great.
And I'll check on fire department with that.
Okay.
Okay, sorry. Item number 21, 2018-191BZ, 215 North 10th Street, Brooklyn.
Just give me a second,
I'm sorry.
Just give me 1 second.
Do you want to go back to the other one?
No, I'm just writing one note.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Sorry. Okay.
Okay. So we're on 2019-191BZ, 215 North 10th Street, Brooklyn. We received a letter from fire department also?
Yeah, so,
It's a letter of no objection?
yeah.
Yes.
And they have revised their operational plan showing the short-term, the long-term, and the medium-term parking areas and an area designated for unloading, which will be marked, and that's where the patrons will come and drop off the vehicles, and beyond that would be all for the valet park. So there's a specifically designated unloading area. Well, that would be marked in the drawing, so I think they should there should be a note in the drawing saying it's an unloading zone that should be marked, and there should be a sign posted within the facility that no personnel, nobody to enter to the other area beyond personnel or valet, just to kind of make sure.
Say that again. Signs locating, telling pedestrians they can't walk past a certain point? Is that it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. That non-personnel to be contained within the unloading area.
Anybody else on this one? No?
Item number 22, 2019-16BZ, 25001 Northern Boulevard, Queens.
They have already made some improvements since the last hearing. I think they have provided additional signage. They have improved the, I think the rear, I'm going through the rear lot fencing. Rear lot fencing was in need of repair. That has been repaired. Photos have been provided. And a sign has been added both along the Northern Boulevard and on to the Marathon Parkway, indicating the exit and entry. On Marathon, we had asked them to revise it from being just an entry to make it an exit and entry, because that's what we observed in reality that was happening, and that because Northern Boulevard is such a busy thoroughfare, it is not possible to enter onto the flow of traffic, and definitely no left turn is permitted. So it would make sense to provide both entry and exit onto the Marathon Parkway.
So that Northern is not an exit?
Northern is an exit only for right turn.
Oh.
But there's so much of vehicular movement, it is very difficult to merge in, and if you do, you're almost affecting the flow of traffic on Northern. So one is better. So what people do end up making the turn onto Marathon, which is what is happening in reality. So there's no reason to impose it because it's not possible to monitor it also.
Is that Commissioner Ali Brown?
I thought my understanding is people do exit on Northern from the drive-through. I'm wrong?
No, they do, but it is not easy.
If you're turning right, it's not difficult.
During morning rush hour, it is extremely difficult because you are waiting for a long time to be able to make that right turn. There's a volume of traffic that is, so that right turn movement will be allowed, but because the right turn movement is so difficult to make, what I observed, and I'd gone there during the morning rush hour, most of the vehicles were actually were exiting onto Marathon Parkway and not exiting on Northern. So my comment was that is already happening. We might as well let it be, and rather than preventing it.
Right, but so it's just an option to go to
Right.
Marathon. If, say, it's sort of backed up to exit onto Northern, maybe you would swing out of the
Right.
lane and go out Marathon.
That's fine.
Right. So
But we could do some signage, right? No entrance or,
No, it would be
No,
right
you need
turns
to allow
only,
them
but
to.
it's illegal to cross the route anyway, right?
Right. There is right now a sign that says no left turn from when you are exiting from Northern Boulevard. So that sign exists and that will remain. And
So it's not anything really different operationally. It's just, it's not allowed to cross Northern Boulevard to go
Right, yeah.
left anyhow, so they'd be
Right.
breaking the law if they did
just-
it.
right.
So it's
The
good to say, just to remind them, no law breaking.
well, the community board stated that they preferred that there wouldn't be any exit from Marathon Parkway and it'd be entrance only.
right, and that's where the problem is. That's the previous approval, it was only entry from Marathon and no exit.
Right.
But because of the issue with Northern Boulevard, vehicles end up exiting
on Marathon.
on Marathon.
I thought we wanted to discontinue that.
It sounds like the site's not, the community board, so, then we talk about having DOT involved in all of this. The community board may want something, but
The site might not
then
be
you've got the driver who's on that drive-through and going out trying to go out Northern Boulevard and then can't because it's clogged or something, so then an option to exit at Marathon. Otherwise, you could really clog the site up with people waiting
Yeah.
to merge
Yeah.
into traffic, right?
Yeah, I
There's
believe
also-
if we block the exit on Marathon, the site's gonna be a mess, because it's gonna be a conflict between non-drive-through people and drive-through people when exiting through Northern Boulevard. It's gonna be a significant conflict there.
Right, because you also have regular parking spaces.
Right.
Yeah.
But I did visit the site on the 9th of January, and I noticed further that there are some cracks in the asphalt, so they might need to be sealed. There is a trash container, big trash container outside the enclosure, that's even shown on the pictures. There was a red liquid on the asphalt close to the trash enclosure. I believe that was like a paint that was just spilled on the asphalt. Regarding the fence that was fixed, it wasn't fixed completely, it was fixed partially. The portion close to Marathon, still in really bad shape. So they fixed it, but they didn't continue the fix all the way to,
The fence?
yes,
And this is, when was your site visit?
January 9th. This is the picture with that liquid thing, and this is the container, the trash container. Oops. Regarding the fence, yeah, if you look at this picture here, This is the fence, this is Marathon, and this is the fence. You see the fence is
Oh,
still
yeah, it's completely
very
crumbled.
loose.
Yeah.
It need to be.
I'm sorry,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm wearing
That's
the wrong
a-
pair of glasses.
Commissioner.
I'm just wearing the
She
wrong
can't
pair
see.
of glasses.
You mean the ones with the binoculars on them?
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so they have.
And in addition to this, I saw light poles close to, right on the property line. I'm not sure.
What did
if-
you see?
Light poles. So
Oh.
I'm not sure how these gonna help with respect to lighting, shedding light on the residential, adjacent residential properties. So I'm not sure about, I know that there are some exceedance, slight exceedance for the lumen, but I'm not sure if the lumen spread was based on actual measurements or just mathematical simulation, so that need to be clarified as well. Because I believe with the locations of the light poles, it could be some higher
Yes,
lumen spread values.
unless they have very specific
Shielding,
shields.
I
don't
I
know
didn't
that-
see that,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
And on the positive side, I was listening to the menu board. It was barely, like, could be here. It's very good.
Move on? Item number 23, 2019-21 BZ, 2223 East 14th Street, Brooklyn.
The applicant has revised the plan and has updated the plan to correct the compliance with regards to the retention of existing walls to remain. Basically, the existing walls to remain on the first floor is shown as 63%. I think there was some confusion with the way it was being analyzed, and I looked at it, it was okay.
So this, with one of these, I always ask, Chase, sorry, to check, scour the
Yeah,
drawings.
okay.
Item number 24, 2019-60 BZ, 132-02 89th Avenue, Queens.
Okay, so at the last hearing, I think we had a lot of questions about the material of the shed, and the applicant has provided the details of the construction material of the shed, and that it has 2-hour fire rating. They also submitted a letter which said it responds to the Fdny violations. There were 5 violations, and have provided documents signed by licensed professionals. Basically, there was a DOB violation from December 3rd regarding stair access to the new building, and the applicant states that DOB would need BSA approval for DOB to provide the documentation. DOB supposedly was okay with egress, which can be provided from the interior as long as the corridor meets the code. I was not able to figure out how that works, so if the applicant can walk us through that, that would be helpful.
So they're saying they need our approval to cure a violation on an existing
Yeah.
building, even
Yeah.
though we're just talking about that little extension.
Right. To me, it was not very clear.
Was it a Map Street or something?
No. I think this is a waiver for side yard, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, sir.
I had asked a question about the different building square footages, because it didn't seem to add up,
Yes.
and it wasn't addressed.
Oh, okay.
New cases, item number 1, 2018-91 BZ, 7880 Leonard Street, Manhattan. This is a PCE.
So we finally have the proof of initial filing to the committee board and elected official, and also the proof of hearing. on this. This is a legalization of a PCE. The PCE has been in operation since June 17, 2014. It is located on a portion of the first floor, mezzanine, cellar, and subcellar. Based on the plan, this is a Crunch Fitness. So they will have weights, cardio, and also in the plan there are massage rooms in the cellar. I could not locate the licenses for the massage therapist, so the applicant could clarify what the massage room is being used for, and do they have massage therapists, they need to provide that. All the levels of the PCE will be accessible by an elevator, which is a common building elevator. My only question is the building lobby entrance at grade with the sidewalk and therefore ADA compliant accessible? That's really those are my comments. Anybody else?
I didn't see that they talked at all about vibration isolation.
Speak louder.
I didn't see that they spoke about vibration isolation in their submission, so I'm not sure if they addressed this at all. Noise issues. My understanding is that they have residential on the first floor. Is that close to the PCE? How this is impacted by the PCE operation? All these kind of, if I believe it should be like a standard thing. If you have a PCE and residential in one building, the first thing that you wanna address our concerns on it is the noise and vibration issue.
Yeah.
And I didn't see that is addressed in the submission.
And if residential is adjacent in any direction, they need to notice, because it's a legalization, they need to notice the building.
But honestly, sometimes I feel like some statement of facts are going to the heart of the issue. This is the PCE, the residential is there. So during the review, it helped me visualize where is the residential with respect to the PCE and some sort of quantify or anticipate the size of the vibration and the noise issue. Some other statement of facts, I feel like they are hiding this. They don't want to talk about it at all. And that kind of behavior actually delays the case.
Of course.
If I'm the one who's writing a statement for a PCE, the first thing I would address, the PCE on such floor, there is residential on this floor at that location, even some sort of a sketch show, and then go to the heart of the noise and the vibration issue and address it. If there isn't, there isn't, and get us peace of mind and make it clear.
Yes, I agree with you. We often see these kinds of things, not just with PCE applications, others where the applicant pool knows that we're going to ask for these things at hearing and chooses not to provide it in advance of the hearing, which slows down the review unnecessarily. We do.
Do we want an elevation plan showing the adjacencies above the PCE?
Yeah, we need to know.
Yeah.
I think they have a section.
Section,
They've submitted
yeah.
a section that shows the location of the,
residential as-
it doesn't show the entire section, but it does show up to 1 or 2 floors above the PCE.
Actually, to our PMs, during the initial review process, what kind of building is this? Is the PCE open? Where is the residential located? Is there any noise issues? Is there any vibration? These are like a checklist
Yes.
to dig for answers for these. If we get answers for these kind of questions during the initial review, it's a piece of cake to review a PCE. It could be granted the same first hearing.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I just want to second the notice to neighbors.
Say that
I
again?
just want to second the notice to neighbors.
Yeah, okay.
Move on? Item number 2, 2019-24 BZ, 2721 Nostrand Avenue, Brooklyn.
We have proof of initial filing to the community board and elected officials, and also proof of notice of hearing. Community board voted all to disapprove the application. Concern being this concentration of auto sales use. This subject facility has grown out of its existing space. We do have 2 letters of support from Councilmember Lewis and Councilmember Williams, and a letter of support from Jewish Community Council of Marine Park. We have some opposition letters from neighborhood and from a block association. I just want to say on record with regards to a statement made in the letter from the block association that this hearing date was chosen so that the neighborhood could not attend. And I want to correct that assertion that has been made with regards to the scheduling of the hearing. All BSA hearings are held on Mondays and Tuesdays, and public can attend both hearings, and public is given the opportunity to testify in front of the board on Tuesday. Also for our hearing, our hearing are recorded and are uploaded onto the BSA website for anyone to view. If unable to attend the public hearing, we accept written testimonies which are entered into the record for the board to consider. So, and all written testimonies are made available to the commissioners, and I can say we all read them. So I don't think we take any of the comments from the community or anybody lightly. We review every one of them. So with that, I just want to go through some very basic notes. With regards to the existing plan, the statement of fact needs to provide a narrative of the existing building, number of vehicles that's on display, the nature of operation, hours of operation of the existing. They need to establish the base. Then from the...
Sorry, they need to establish the base of what?
Base operation, the existing operation. There's nothing in the document that is clearly stating the base existing.
That was approved initially.
Baseline, I would call it the baseline.
Okay.
I want to know the baseline operation, the existing operation on this site. Not just the existing building, but on the lot on which this building is being built on, how has it been used to date? And I also want to be clear that what the applicant here is asking not for the enlargement of the existing building. The enlargement of the existing building is an as-of-right enlargement. What the applicant is before us is requesting the use of the rooftop for parking. And that's what we are reviewing. That's what our comments and our review are based on. So the applicant provided revised plans and statement of findings on Friday. I don't know if the commissioners had a chance to look at it. This was in response to inconsistencies that were found in the statement of fact and the plan. And so I think we should all just give our comments based on what you have reviewed. I don't think your comments would change based on the plans, the revised plans anyway. So the applicant is proposing 86 spaces, and this is the new change. The initial submission had 62 rooftop parking spaces. The revised plan is now proposing 86 rooftop parking spaces for customers, and whereas I believe 42 is required, and 29 stackers would be used on the roof to accommodate these 86 parking spaces. So altogether, the facility will have 232 vehicles. The customer parking number, as I said, has increased from the initial submission from 63 to 86. And so that's one thing. I do not understand how this jump happened and why. I have lots of questions.
Just happened on Friday.
Just happened on Friday. I have lots of questions. This is just the start of it, so please bear with me. I do not understand the designation of 5 handicap parking spaces on the roof when the rooftop is not accessible to customers and customer parking is only done through attended parking. So I don't see the need for it. We need to understand the proposal first to establish the need for the increased number of parking spaces that has been identified. And we need to do this before, because we need to identify the adverse effect and the improvements. What are the adverse effects that this proposed improvement will have on the neighborhood? The initial plan showed a ramp, now they're proposing an elevator. The applicant does not provide any justification for needing to increase the required number of accessory parking spaces from required 42 to 86 spaces for this facility. We do not know the nature of the operation at this facility. What is the current operation? How many customers arrive and are estimated to arrive at a given time to the site? How much time does a customer spend at the site? What is the turnover rate of the customers visiting this facility? So what I understand from the drawings, at least, the facility will sell both new cars and used cars. There's a good amount of this facility area, both in the proposed cellar and the first floor. Most of this area is going to be used for display of used vehicles. And my question is, how many used vehicles need to be on display for customers to select? The used vehicles in the cellar and the first floor, are they for display only or for pickup, delivery from the main dealers, etc.? Do the used vehicles area need to be accessed by the customers? Since the stackers are being used both in cellar and first floor for these used vehicle display, it is very likely that these spaces in the cellar and the first floor do not need to be accessed by customers, and therefore more vehicles can be stored than shown in the plan. Similarly, since attendants will be parking the customer vehicles, why can't the customer vehicles be packed within the first and the cellar floor? And also need to understand the number of customers coming at a given time to determine if the area allocated for the customer drop-off and pickup along Nostrand, if that is adequate, and is one elevator adequate. So that means there needs to be enough reservoir spaces, so-called. I mean, the term reservoir is not applicable, but I'm just quoting it like a similar area where a vehicle can be parked before it's taken to the roof. There should be more designated spaces for customer pickup and drop-off. My reason for asking these questions about the auto sale operation is to understand how much of the proposed facility is needed for display of vehicles and will be used for display only and not storage, and could the excess space be used for storage by utilizing and be utilized for customer parking within the building. The application is inadequate in responding to the findings, including Section 7303. Specifically, one of the finding of 7303 is the hazard or disadvantages to the community outweighed by the advantages to be derived by the community by granting the special permit. We must consider the adverse effect on the privacy, quiet, light, and air in the neighborhood. So far, the application does not go into the details of these. And also, one of the findings of 7303 is that we asked DOT a report with respect to the anticipated traffic congestion resulting from the special permit use. I think in this case we should ask DOT to weigh in on it. The statement of fact refers to 5 foot wide natural deep screening. This is in response to, I guess, 7303A finding. They're recommending a natural greening on the rooftop. And the greening would be a 5 foot wide natural green space, according to the statement of finding. But the plan shows a 10 foot wide, so there's inconsistency.
What grows on a roof? That's lovely. How do they make that grow in the first place?
That's exactly my question. Doesn't matter whether it's 5 feet or 10 feet. With the proposed stacker now, a 10 foot high screening is not going to be sufficient, first of all.
You just said 10 wide. Did you mean 10
10
foot
high
wide?
or
The first
wide?
time you said
Front to
10
back,
foot wide, or is it
both.
10 foot high?
So the plan shows 10 foot wide
Front
and
to
10
back.
foot high.
Because the original plan showed 5 foot wide, but 10 feet
Right, they
high.
changed
So they
it.
made
Right.
the change?
So the revised plan shows a 10 foot wide and a 10 foot high.
Okay,
The statement of fact still says 5 foot wide and 10 foot high.
okay.
So my comment is 10 foot high screening is not going to be adequate if you're proposing a stacker. And to allow a minimum of 10 foot high natural green screen that is 10 foot wide, and the plan shows all in-ground planting, you need to have a soil depth of at least 3 feet, if not more.
Oh, on a roof? Much
On
more
a,
than that.
much more than,
Yeah.
I'm just being generous. And the roof, so far, the roof structure, I don't think would be able to accommodate that. It's already in construction. And the plans that have been submitted do not show that much depth. So I'm not sure how, in reality, that luscious, dense forest would be accommodated on the
Needs to
roof.
be irrigated artificially, needs drainage.
Yeah. So we
There's
need a.
reason you don't see often really lush rooftop gardens, right?
And I think before we even get to that, we need to understand, do they really need that much of customer parking space? And does it therefore need to be on the rooftop? Because if it doesn't have to be rooftop, if the customer supply is much less, then it can be accommodated probably within the building, and you don't need a rooftop parking, and then we may not have to talk about the greening. So, but I'm just throwing it out there in terms of the reality of what would be needed to build a 10-foot wide, 10-foot high natural green. The construction that is underway has not been designed to accommodate that. No information also has been provided for rooftop lighting. I know I'm looking at the application in its entirety, but my first question is, how much space do you need, the customer parking space? The applicant also did an on-street parking supply to justify why they need, the text is not very clear, but I'm assuming that's why the on-street parking supply was done, to justify the need for the 86 on-street customer parking spaces. And I have some questions regarding the methodology. They picked Friday and Monday to conduct the parking study. Though, based on the sales appointment, Monday, Friday, and Saturday are the peaks. So I'm not sure why Saturday was not done, and this was done in summertime. So I'm not sure if that's also ideal. And based on the appointment, the maximum vehicle would be, maximum number of customers that would be coming would be 154. That's the Saturday peak. So let's say if that's the maximum, 154 customers will be coming throughout the day. Then how does that translate to the need for an 86 on-site parking spaces? Because we're talking about 154 throughout the day, not in 1 hour.
Right.
So why do we need 86 spaces? Also, the application talks about the delivery of sales vehicles, that there are 3 to 5 cars, car carrier trailers that would be coming. I need to understand where they will be parked, what will be the hours of delivery, how long does it take to unload, because that also affects in terms of the circulation of vehicles. If we are going to allow 84 into the customer parking, the traffic volume, will it be adequate? It is very clear from the site visit that there is an issue with on-street parking. This entire corridor of Nostrand has several auto dealership, so there is an issue with it, and therefore we do need DOT to weigh in on it.
We did ask DOT to weigh in on it.
We did?
They issued 5 comments on the EAS.
Okay.
They should be on the system, if not, I'll send them.
Okay.
Sorry, speak up.
Great.
We asked DOT to weigh in, and they reviewed the EAS and issued 5 comments. They should be on the system, if not, I'll recirculate them. Most of them were about inconsistencies that you had already pointed out, and verifying that the valet parking arrangement would not produce more congestion and add to the queuing, on-street queuing. So they want more information.
So they were okay with the valet park?
No, they're concerned that it might
Questions?
Okay.
slow things down, so they want, yeah.
Okay. And FDNY also issued a letter of objection with regards to the rooftop access.
The applicant submitted a response this morning to that and still is under review. I think initially DOT was not, fire department wasn't satisfied from the email I saw a little while ago, but it's still.
So fire department submitted a comment on, sorry, say it again.
I'm sorry. Fire department submitted a letter of objection. This morning, it appears that the applicant responded to fire department, and fire department initially said that they didn't believe the plan was acceptable. This is about allowing the fire department to have access to the roof, that it was not acceptable still.
Still not acceptable after.
Right. There said it has to be openings in the parapet wall to allow the fire department to access the roof. So, still on the drawing board there.
So I didn't see the latest set of plans, so I'm going based on the plans I saw before. And I had many of the questions that the vice chair actually had, because we had a conversation last week about it. And I had many questions about that. I think that if I'm going to focus solely on the rooftop parking, for me, well, I just want to say, I've been to the site multiple times. I actually bought a car from this site a couple of decades ago. So I do know that this site is part of the Plaza Auto Mall. It works in tandem with the other dealerships. It's all owned by the same plaza ownership. So their whole approach is like a kind of one-stop shopping for new automobiles, whether you want a Honda or a Hyundai or a Toyota, and I think they might even have Nissan there. So the idea is that whatever you want, we can accommodate you. So they really work on a volume kind of nature, where the more people who come in, the more people they could satisfy. They want to put people in the car. They want to put people in the car same day if possible. And they want as many people as they possibly can get. The result of that is there's an incredible amount of street traffic and clogging of the streets with parked cars, cars that may be shown, cars that are about to be delivered, people who are coming to the site and waiting to get access to parking spots, all sorts of vehicles, always clogging this on business days. And I can only assume that on Saturdays it's probably worse, because that's really a prime car shopping situation, the car shopping day. That being said, I think that rooftop parking in a perfect world would be a great idea. However, this site is actually on top of residences that are behind it. And the plans that I saw did not show you the distance from the rooftop to the homes behind. And I think that's like a major thing that we need to understand the impact on the residences behind. And I think that the screening that they're providing does not even resolve the issue of the light, the sound, the smells that are going to be up on that roof. And I think actually a better solution would be to shorten the depth of the building and provide actual landscape screening from the ground, because then you have enough earth to provide very tall trees, because you have to get up over that roof with about 15 feet in order to block what's going on there. My understanding based on the previous plans is that they are kind of modeling their landscaping on the High Line, and I don't think that's a good idea, because the High Line was providing landscaping to beautify, not to block any of the noxious effects of the High Line. And the noxious effects of the High Line don't even compare to noxious effects of parking cars and stackers on a roof. Right. So I think that that's the wrong model. Mm-hmm. They should be looking at literally tall trees interspersed with bushes and evergreens that could fill the gap of a tree trunk, so that literally it almost forms a wall of landscaping. That's the only way, and that's why I think it's best done from the ground, because I don't think you could have a deep enough soil well to be able to provide that kind of lush landscaping that you're gonna need here. They say they don't have reservoir spaces in the building, and they're counting on taking parking spaces away from the street system to provide some kind of like layover until people can actually get into the garage and have the car taken from them. And I think that's just going to exacerbate the problem, because they're planning on doing that in front of the Toyota dealership, but they're also doing it across the street in front of the other dealership. which is going to really exacerbate the problem of parking in that area because you're taking away public parking spaces. So, and so you're taking away public parking spaces with the idea that you want traffic to flow clearly through the area. But I don't know that it's going to resolve that problem. But what it will do is it'll drive people onto the side streets to look for public parking. And that's not a good option here. I'm really sympathetic to the community board and the community in this situation because I do see a business that is clearly outgrowing its site, all of the different businesses. So they've got a long way to go to prove to me that they're going to meet these findings.
Just to add to your comments, based on the on-street parking study, their traffic consultant has recommended some change to the traffic regulations to minimize some of the on-street parking. So definitely.
To be fair, though, a lot of the cars that are being parked on like either on the sidewalk or on the street are the cars that are going out for a test drive. They're usually cars that belong to the auto spa, the auto mall. It's not just
So that means
customers
that's not
coming in.
going to go away, even
That's-
if these changes to the parking regulations are done. It will then free up the space solely for the auto dealers to use it for their
I just
customer.
I don't see how this application is going to meet 7303A or C.
I agree with you.
There was a comment on the DOT letter regarding the proposed parking restriction along the Nostrand Avenue. Please have the consultant provide the schematic showing the distance of the parking restriction for DOT's review and approval.
The distance of the parking restriction along Northern.
Nostrand.
No, it's like a no standing. They want
Oh.
to do these no standing
Yeah.
zones so that people could just pull to the curb and await their turn to get into the garage.
Right.
And there is a bus route along Nostrand. So I'm not sure,
There isn't a dedicated bus lane at this point, though.
Okay.
It's further north of here.
goes to show that DOT has to see it, because if this can affect bus circulation.
There is a bus station actually in Google Map that's right next to the automobile.
But I think, when you're eliminating parking, that goes through community board review.
Yeah.
So the community board will be opposed to it. Whether DOT is responsive to community board oppositions, I don't know. But I know that they would have to be approved to do that. And the community board obviously agrees that this is too much going on in this neighborhood, which is largely residential. It's supposed to be residential zoning, essentially. This is very low commercial overlay district.
Right, and it's interesting because this part of Nostrand is two ways, and it's a parking lane and a traffic lane in each direction. So it's not even like it's on a very wide street where it can absorb double parking. It really can't, and you have to weave your way through at certain times of the day.
I believe that Vice Chair, first of all, I agree with all what was said. Second, the Vice Chair described this as it's not an enlargement. I would describe it as an equivalent to an enlargement, because actually...
No, that she's saying the enlargement is as of right.
Yes.
What's before us is only the rooftop parking.
Yes, I understand.
Right.
But I look at the rooftop as it is equivalent to enlarging the building. How? And instead of making the building, the display area smaller and creating like larger zone for parking, they are enlarging the sales area or the display area, or using larger amount of area for display and just chasing the parking on the roof, which is very aggressive to the neighbors right behind them, on the east, I guess. And regardless for the structural capacity of the roof, whether it could take the load from a planting bed or not, I really don't care about this. Even if Because they could show up tomorrow and say, you know what, yes, it can, and they can provide evidence. Actually, they could have like planned this before they started the structural design and designed that roof to accommodate that kind of load. So even if they did that, I don't care. I care about the neighbors, and I feel like the kind of operation they are seeking to expand to is kind of so big for the size of the building. So if this is the case, they either have to live with the size of the building or just look for somewhere else.
Yeah.
I think the other problem is that if the rooftop is going to be only accessible by the valet, vehicles are going to be parked by the valet. We really do not know at the end of the day whether that's going to be used for. And as you've said, the cellar and the first floor, it's only used for display of vehicles. Those are not going to be accessible by the customers. You can pack them in even more. And provide all your customer parking in the cellar and the ground floor using the valet service, but it doesn't have to go to the roof.
I believe if they
And you
knew-
can still accommodate all of that.
If they knew ahead of time before they start construction or they start planning this expansion, if they knew ahead that they're gonna need this kind of additional parking, I would say, they could have added one more like sub-cellar or something. The area over there, according to the drawings that they submitted, the ground elevation is about 25. Usually groundwater is probably plus or minus 5. It should be around 0, but it could be up to 5. So if groundwater is deep at that location, they could have easily added some other sub-cellar, and it's gonna cost them some additional money for the excavation support, plus the perimeter walls and.
I think where I'm having difficulty is that there's no way in the document that is connecting the dots telling me, 84 customers come at a given time. And therefore, I need to accommodate them, and I'm therefore relieving the traffic pressure, parking pressure from the residential building, and I'm accommodating them. So far, we know 42 is required. 42, I think they can accommodate it within the existing building. There's enough space in the cellar, according to the plan, where there is no parking. You can use valet parking to park your vehicles, or customer vehicles there. There are ways to accommodate that. But why this jump from 42 to 84? It's like double the amount. There's no clear, looking at the appointment sheet and looking at what the number is, to me, it's not connecting the dot yet.
It could be just and this is guess, it could be just a negotiation strategy. Many of the people who come before us, they think how we're gonna think. And this is typical for developers in the city. This is the way I used to work with developers, and you know what, before we submit something to an agency, we think, okay, we're gonna need the 5 piles. Let's give them no piles, and then when we go to the agency, they're gonna ask for 7, we're gonna negotiate, say no 3, and we're gonna settle on 5. So it's kind of a negotiation.
It may be that, but, just a recollection of the other parking garage that we looked at not too long ago, where it was
One in College
rooftop
Point.
parking, in an industrial park, right? And the parking garage, whatever it was, 3 stories, then rooftop parking. We looked, and there was only, 5 houses or something located a relative distance from the garage. The community negotiated with that property owner. They turned that garage into like this green vertical garden.
I believe you're talking about Restaurant Depot?
No.
No.
The white stone one.
The white stone,
The one in
yeah.
white
Okay.
stone.
So they turned the garage into this vertical garden, and then in front of the vertical garden are planted these conifers that are going to grow to be like 40 feet high. And that's far away from the residents. And happily, the developer was very agreeable to work with the residents. This is
They also put greenery on the wall.
inches from residents.
It's not inches, it's
Yeah,
adjacent.
it's adjacent,
Yeah.
right? And so, in the ones that we've turned down, this is the reason we've turned them down, where there's no way to buffer this rooftop. I would just say that, I mean, just hearing everybody's comments, that they should, that this is not going anywhere. They're not going to meet any of the findings, they can't justify it, and it's not a programmatic needs analysis, right? You're required, if you want to do an expansion, to provide the amount of parking that's required by the zoning. Provide the amount of parking required by the zoning, or don't do it, right? But to impose their business even more, I mean, and if you just look at the nature of the open parking lot right now, that's got stackers right up against the rear of these people's houses with no buffer at all. The people are, defending themselves with fences and their own shrubs. It's just disrespectful. I mean,
Yeah, if you look at it on both sides, it's
Yes.
against the neighborhood, so it's not benefiting actually the neighborhood.
right.
And in the meantime, the only gain is gonna go to the developer
Yeah.
or the owner of the facility. The
Correct.
neighborhood is gonna gain nothing.
Yes.
But they're gonna actually get losses because of that, like the situation of putting a parking garage next to a residential.
Yeah.
Does the applicant include anything on the plans for the roof about amplified sound, if there's a valet operation up there?
No, that's just their landscaping that has, to look like the High Line. That's
Still
their
early for
only
that.
answer.
Yeah, so
And it
they're on,
doesn't address any of those
So I guess
issues.
if we could ask to make a statement as to whether they're gonna include any amplified sound on the roof,
I really don't,
and then how.
I think, my
Feeling
problem
sorry,
is,
yeah.
I don't even want to go there, because
Yeah.
we are not convinced that what the need is.
Yeah.
What is the number that they need, and can that number be accommodated below the roof line? That's the part we are
Yeah,
The
but
only
I'm a
problem
step
you're at is
further.
now you're going to a programmatic needs analysis.
Yeah,
No,
When
step-
you're talking about what somebody needs, that's a programmatic needs
Yeah.
analysis.
It doesn't meet the findings.
So you shouldn't be
It's-
talking about
Right.
that.
I think the findings for this
Yeah.
parking, rooftop parking is very clear. The findings are, how does it affect the immediate surrounds and the residents, right? And in the cases that, this board has turned down several of these because of adjacencies to residents, right? And in the most recent case, as I said, that case took a really long time because ultimately the negotiation was between the community and the developer, and they came back to us with this rather impressive solution that really did address the impacts. And that garage building is far away, actually, from the neighbors. The issue for us had to do with light, not so much pollution, and how they were solving it, right? Here you've got light, noise, pollution, immediate proximity. It's as though those residential
Traffic.
people don't matter at
Smells.
all to this developer, and that's just wrong. So I don't think we should be, I'm not frankly interested in their business model.
Nor am I
I don't
interested.
think I don't think it's an appropriate question.
It's unfair to the residents
Yeah.
next to the building
Right.
to put something like that.
Right.
Move on? Item number 3, 2019-65BZ, 373 Avenue W, Brooklyn. This is a single-family home enlargement.
so we have proof of initial filings with the community board and elected officials, and also proof of hearing. Community board voted to approve the project, 29 in favor, 5 opposed. This is an interesting irregular interior lot. It has a 40-foot foot frontage, and then as it goes in the back, it's like an L-shaped. And when it goes to the back, the width of the lot widens. The applicant is seeking a side yard waiver and a rear yard waiver. I have questions. The applicant is saying that they don't need an FAR waiver because it's a predominantly built-up area, and therefore qualify for 1.35 FAR, which is what is allowed in an R5 predominantly built-up. I would like the applicant to show that.
Establish that it's predominantly built up?
No.
They
No,
often
so
make the
need to
claim and then
establish.
they don't
No, the
qualify.
applicant needs to establish that. That's my first question. The applicant needs to establish that it's predominantly built up.
Madam Vice Chair? What would you,
There's a test. It's a defined term. You have to go through the analysis.
So the predominantly built up zoning 1210 definition says that it shall not apply to any zoning lot occupied as of October 21st, 1987, by a single or two-family detached or semi-detached residences where 75% or more of the aggregate length of the block fronts in the residential use on both sides of the street facing each other are occupied by such residences as of October 21st, 1987. So it's a pretty simple one. So.
But we've often had applicants come and say they're predominantly built up and they're not. They can't prove it.
I only asked as an
Yeah.
instruction, so that
Yeah,
if they're
no,
going to
but-
respond tonight, at least they know what they're,
Yeah, but, you know, for the architect, it's a defined term,
Yeah.
so they need to show that it meets the definition. It's not an inspection that we give, it's, that you have to show it through the
Test.
defined term.
And even if when you go to DOB, I think you would need to show, right,
you
that
do.
you meet predominantly built up?
You do, of course. Because it's so much more FAR, significant.
Move on?
No, I do have. So I do have question in this one. One is the FAR, because until we know the FAR, the applicant has provided an FAR study. If it's predominantly built up, you know, then we have to review the FAR study in a different way. The applicant is stating that 45% of the building in the 400-foot radius is at 1.15 FAR or more. So Judge, just want to put a note there. The applicant has also submitted a rear yard study, and I have concern with the proposal. That is, the rear yard in the social block is predominantly 30 feet or more, and with few exceptions. And those few exceptions are for shallower lots that are much shallower than 100 feet, where the rear yard depths are 5 feet or even less. But looking at just the abutting buildings, the abutting building on Lot 48 has a 45-foot deep rear yard. Lot 43 is the shallow lot, and that has a 60-foot deep lot and has a 9-foot deep rear yard. Lot 40 maintains a 27-foot deep rear yard, and Lot 54 maintains a 30-foot deep rear yard. So I would recommend that the applicant set back the second floor by 25 feet from the rear lot line, and attic floor set back further to 30-foot rear lot line, or to match the building that's on Lot 44. And just on the FAR, you know, some of the buildings that are at 1.15 FAR, many of these are the shallow lots, so that's why the FARs are more.
Right.
FAR is more, but that question will only rise once we determine the predominantly built up.
Is that something that they should provide a CRD1, since the definition in 1210 specifically contemplates evidence acceptable to the Commissioner of Buildings?
How have we done?
I think if there's some standard, maybe we could reach out to DOB, what do you usually ask for to establish it? But the questions are pretty direct. But we could ask DOB, what do they usually use? It's true that I don't think we've ever seen one that established it was a predominantly built-up area. Yeah, because every time that you've asked the question, they change the FAR down to whatever it is for the zoning district, in this case, 0.5, I guess.
0.75.
No, 0.75. It's almost every single time you ask the question, they say, oh, and then they go back down. So I don't know what the process is, but I also suspect that the architects just like that number better. They go for it, and then we ask that question. I like the number better too. It's just not applicable.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No? Okay.
All right.
Item number 4, 2019-83 BZ 5901 at Flatlands Avenue, Brooklyn.
We have proof of initial filing to the community board and elected officials, and also proof of hearing. Community board voted to approve unanimously. We have DOI sign off on it. I'm still awaiting response from FDNY. I
On
don't.
this one? Oh, nothing came this week?
Yeah. This is a new construction. It's currently underway. Proposal is for a PCE, Blink PCE, and it will be the sole tenant of this two-story commercial building. There will be also parking provided on site. So I would assume everything would be per code regarding fire alarm, ADA, and sound. The applicant is stating it would meet all the sound requirement. My question is, the site plan shows some ghost curb cuts along Flatlands and Pierre Degat Avenue. Am I pronouncing it correctly? Some of these curb cuts are not feasible as they lead to nowhere onto the site, so the applicant needs to clarify that. And on the first floor plan shows that there is a physical therapy area, and my question is, will massage service be provided at the site? And that's all.
Vice Chair?
Yep.
FDNY submitted a no objection letter over the weekend.
Oh, I think you had told me about it. I'm sorry. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Okay, any comments? All right, next one.
Item number 5, 2019-177BZ, 56 West 8th Street, Manhattan. It's also a PCE.
Right, we have proof of initial filing to the community board and elected official, and also to proof of hearing. Community board voted to approve unanimously in favor. There are no DOI
We
issues.
had over the weekend. FDNY submitted no objection.
FDNY submitted an objection? Okay.
When
And we
did they
have-
open their legalization?
Did you forward that?
Do we know when they open?
No, because.
No, we don't have any date on it.
Because they're open.
I know, but I usually forward when I get.
So, and it's a residential building, so we need notice. Right.
No. West 8th Street?
It's a one-story
It's a
building.
one-story
It's a
commercial.
one-story
I'm sorry,
building.
I'm on the, maybe I'm on the wrong one.
You're on Flatlands, probably.
I'm on Leonard.
Oh, sorry.
And this is
Flatland, oh, we're still on,
We're on
still
West
on
8th.
Leonard? Okay.
No, we're
I mean,
on West
Flat-
8th Street.
we are on West 8. It's a one-story
Core Power
building.
Yoga.
I did the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a typo in the signage analysis. It says the total surface area of the signage is 15 square feet, but the illuminated signage is 18 square feet. It should be 15 or less, not more. And the signage sheet that was uploaded into our SharePoint has only one sheet, though the sheet refers to pages 2 and 3. So if we could get a clarification on that, and that's all.
I would say this is one of the, like, very nice statement of facts I ever read. It's very organized. I did review this case like very smoothly. I love it. Yeah.
We can use it as a model.
Yeah, we could, yeah.
Okay.
Move on.
You okay? You're okay? Yeah.
Item number 6, 2019-181BZ, 57 Leonard Street, Manhattan.
We have proof
It's also
of initial
PCE.
filing to committee board and elected official, and also proof of hearing. Committee board voted to approve. In favor, 33 in favor, 1 abstention. There is no issue on this from DOI. Do we have a sign off from FDNY on this one?
No,
Sorry, was that a yes?
I didn't receive one.
Oh,
Sorry.
This is a legalization of a PCE. It's a yoga studio. It has been operating since February of 2018. There was sound attenuation details that's been provided, and I believe it's been billed to that. I'm not that concerned since this is a yoga studio.
so when you fling your legs against the wall, it really does reverberate. But I'm just saying.
I have one question regarding the ADA. There is a step up from the street level to the entrance. So just want to make sure if the site is accessible from street level.
There is a service entrance
Oh,
right
there is
next
a
door
service?
that's
Okay.
at grade.
Okay, great, thank you. I guess we should be okay with it then.
Okay, move on?
Yeah.
Okay, item number 7, 2019-203BZ, 144-43 Farmers Boulevard, Queens. This is a special permit for a non-accessory radio tower, sorry.
We have proof of initial filing to community board and elected official, and also proof of notice of hearing. Community board voted to approve 24 in favor, 8 opposed. There is a condition, though the condition is associated with another location, not the subject site. The condition is that the facility at 147-10 Guy Brewer Boulevard will be upgraded, the site be upgraded. And the upgrade would be that the fence needs to be more attractive and complementary to the local community. We have one letter of support. So this is a corner lot. This had a BSA variance, a use variance. This is in a residential district, so this was to allow for a 720 square foot of commercial use with at-grade parking. So before I get into the special permit, I have some basic questions regarding the application. The applicant has not responded to the notice of comments question regarding the DOB objection. It needs to be revised. It needs to state that the zoning resolution section, the proposed action is contrary to, which is ZR section 22-21, for which the special permit pursuant to 7330 is required. Even though TPPN 5-98 has established a path forward for an as-of-right building, the permit for cellular tower and equipment provided it meets the specifications and requirements set in TPPN, the subject lot is under BSA jurisdiction, and I don't think DOB has the authority to grant the permit. And the reason I say that there is an as-of-right AT&T cellular tower on this site. So since the existing use on the site was permitted through the BSA variance, the existing cellular tower of AT&T and the proposed cellular antenna of Verizon and the equipments were not analyzed in the 2001 and the 2002 amendment, especially for financial analysis and for neighborhood character. So the proposed and the existing use requires an amendment to the previous grant, and since the variance was granted for the entire site. And I would say, instead of focusing on findings B and E, and I would like Commissioner Otley-Brown to weigh in on it, focus on the program. That is the public service, a public service utility benefits the area, and that this area is underserved, and that this is the best site to provide such a facility to serve the area.
Isn't the finding a little different here?
Sorry, what?
I was wondering if the finding's a little different because they're not installing a new radio tower, they're just, replacing one.
No, I'm still on the variance. So because this site had a variance,
Okay,
and when we granted the variance, we just granted variance for a use group 6 storefront. At that time, we did not analyze a cellular tower or anything. And DOB supposedly gave a permit. We do not have any documents with us indicating
Okay.
that DOB granted a permit for the existing cellular tower that's there, the AT&T cellular towers that are there. So my question is, first of all, DOB shouldn't have, because it's a variance site. It should have been reviewed by us, and we should have amended the plans, and then those cellular towers should have been built. The applicant is saying that the TPPN 5-98 allowed for a so-called as-of-right cellular towers in residential districts. I agree with that, but in this case, it's different because we have a site that has a variance, that's under BSA jurisdiction. And therefore, the BSA application should have been amended, even for the existing one and for the proposed one.
I agree with that.
Okay, so they need to go through the 7221 and go through the original set of findings and indicate how the existing and the proposed still is consistent with what they have. And I
Wait a minute, it's consistent with what they have,
what was found in the,
What was found when? So
as part of the original
in
approval.
the original approval, which isn't referred to at all in the materials here, right? The original approval had some sort of financial study that said you need use group 6 here, otherwise you can't make a reasonable
Right.
return on your investment, and it was the minimum variance necessary to grant relief.
Right.
So now there's an income from the cell towers, whatever it is, which exceeds the minimum variance to grant relief, which was use group 6. So my question is, how in the world would you ever be able to prove it?
Well, I think the only exception I find in this case is that because cellular towers are considered public service utility and that it benefits the community.
No, because it pays the landlord money.
No, it does, but it is also serving the larger interest of the community, which is underserved by cellular services. And if they can show that this area is very underserved, which is what they're stating, Verizon is stating, this area is underserved by cellular network, and this was the best location that they could find that could provide the best coverage for this area, that may be one way of addressing it.
That's the findings for the special permit. That's not the findings for the 7221 is the unique physical condition that leads to the hardship, right?
Yeah.
Which got covered already, and the grant was for the minimum variance necessary. They could have said, you know what, we don't want use group 6, we want residential or community facility, which is as of right, but please give us cell towers that'll offset
That's true.
the hardship, right? Now you've got this additional arguable windfall, the same as we do on the Bella Vista cases, right? It's yet another version of Bella Vista. Instead of selling air rights, they could have been selling cellular station rights, however much money they make on those, or, advertising sign rights, or those kinds of things, right? I actually don't see.
In other words, even if they meet the findings for the special permit, you might, while approving the special permit, if we do, you might undermine the findings of the variance that was granted before.
Correct.
Because of the change in the dynamics of the financial
Right.
equation.
And the only thing I can think of, Commissioner Otley Brown, of course, is the expert on this particular subject, but the only thing I can think of is that the use group 6 wasn't working out, right? There was something wrong with how, the idea of having commercial use on this site, and the only way that you could sort of
Mitigate that.
ameliorate the problem is to bring in another use group 6 use, or unless it's a use group 6 use. I mean, all that stuff needs to be investigated.
No, I
right?
think you have to talk about E, and if you're going to go back to Bella Vista, you have to use Bella Vista as a format for how you're going to approach this. And one way to do that, I don't know when the original variance was granted.
2000.
You might be able to argue that cell service or cell providing was not an industry that it is now and was never conceived of at the time of the original variance. It was not as income producing as it is now. That would be the argument to me, so that you could then talk about if the owner had a chance to consider other forms of income, this would not be one because it was not really an income generator. But then you would have to go into the whole cell service provider industry at the time of the variance. That's what I was thinking, in keeping with Bella Vista, but I don't know. I have not had experience with this case, with a
Right.
case like this.
Right. And in this, and then you could say, well, what is this thing? Is this thing kind of like a use group 6 in the sense of being, the board gave permission to sort of basically build a rental building or a commercial building here. And just like you'd be renting out, just to expand it a little bit, if it was a commercial building and you had a couple of parking spaces, you're charging the tenant for the parking spaces. So that's sort of an accessory use to this use group 6. Is the radio tower, it's not accessory to any of this use group 6, but is it sort of like a use group 6 as a standalone somehow? I mean, I don't know. I don't really know what those things are considered, and it's just part of part of the commercial operations, like we often get amendments where the approval was for a bank and now they want to put in a hair salon. And both are, some use group 6, but it's a different place on the chart, and so we're okay with a hair salon as opposed to a bank. Does it fit into something like that? I actually don't.
Or is it an accessory use?
Right, but what's it
to-
accessory to?
Well, that's what they're going to say, this is an accessory use using the TPPN. Because a TPPN almost treats the cellular tower, provided it's within 5% of the total floor area, as an accessory use. So that the applicant is arguing that the existing AT&T tower is so-called the accessory use, therefore as of right use.
As of right to,
But in any case, don't you think they need to go back to the original variance
I
number?
agree.
And
I
file it
agree.
as an amendment?
Yeah.
I agree, that, right. So that was, did you have a question? So that was my first question.
No, I agree with that.
No, I was looking at Carlo. Procedurally? Is that what you
Yeah, there-
have experienced? Because
Yes.
you're here even longer than me, that's why I'm asking.
There's very few, but there were some variance sites in the past that had these types of installations that came for amendments.
Okay.
Do we know when, I'm having trouble finding the date that they originally put up the radio tower.
We don't have that information.
It'd be interesting if it's closer to 2000 than further away from it.
Right. We need them to submit DOB approval for these existing towers. Because they're saying it meets the TPPN guidelines and therefore got the DOB permit. We need that for our documentation.
Just to clarify for the board, so the cellular installation being proposed here is not AT&T. It's Verizon. AT&T was installed at some point by another carrier. And my understanding is that they may have gone to DOB and it was permitted by them, but we don't have that. So just to be clear for the applicant representing tomorrow, they're representing Verizon and the new installation.
yeah, but,
Which is a co-location.
yes. But so this is the thing, where the applicant comes who represents the
Tenant.
tenant, and in this case, there needs to be a co-application
Yeah.
with the property owner who was the beneficiary of the variance.
Yeah.
And that's the problem.
Yeah.
Right. So, yes, so tomorrow's applicant's not going to be able to answer any of these questions because
Right, they weren't
arguably
representing
were
AT&T.
unaware of the issue, right?
Though I would say these comments that I'm raising are not new. It has been raised by our project manager in the notice of comment.
Notice of comments,
Yes.
which were just not responded to.
Right.
Another thing is that there's a pending interpretive appeal for whether these are properly classified as a radio tower versus a use group 6 other communication structure. So this has obviously been filed as a radio tower, but with respect to the original variance, the TPPN specifically does talk about use group 6 as a primary use, other communication equipment.
Thank you for raising, because that was another comment I had. I think I did have this conversation with our general counsel and with our executive director as to why this application is before us under as a radio tower, when TPPN specifically states that if you are not meeting the requirements, then anything other than that qualifies as a, as it says.
If you are not meeting the requirements?
So TPPN says that cellular tower equipment must not occupy more than 5% of the floor area on the zoning lot, or 400 square feet. I'm assuming whichever is less applies in this case. And then it has some specific sizes for each of the antenna and other things. Then it says, to the extent the antenna and related equipment do not meet these criteria, they may be classified as use group 6 communications equipment structure. So if it is being classified as use group 6 communications equipment structure, then why is this application is being filed under section 7330 and not, there is another section which is 7314, which is also for public service establishments for communication equipment structures. And the findings for that is slightly different, which is that this use will serve the residential area within which it is proposed to be located, and that there are serious difficulties in locating it in a district wherein it is permitted as of right, and from which it could serve the residential area, which makes it necessary to locate such use within residential district. So I'm not sure why 7330 is being used, which is for radio or television tower, as opposed to 7314, which is specifically for residential district public service establishments in residential districts for communication equipment structure.
So obviously
That's
this is not
that's a subject of the
Yeah.
appeal, no?
Right. Obviously,
Yeah.
this is not an interpretive appeal, but to the extent that these issues are being sort of thought of by the board, they could be asked the DOB and the appellant in that. And if the applicant in this case actually wanted to appear in that, I expect that they could submit testimony.
So, but the appeal is not calendared yet, or it is? No.
It's
It's
in
going to be soon.
We have a discussion
Yeah, we're having
Wednesday.
discussions.
Okay, but it's not calendared yet.
Not as of yet,
today?
but we're looking to have it calendared.
Right, so it makes, we've had, I think we had a situation like this with another case where we had these kind of simultaneous confusing cases at the same time as an appeal, where we couldn't talk about the appeal during the case that was sort of the just basic question case, or the basic application case, and I'm concerned about how we handle these, because you can't, if we have an appeal that's asked us to go to the root of the question, and an application that raises the root of the question, then what do we do, right? So, yeah, we may want to bunch these together.
Yeah, and I believe, I mean, I'd have to check, but I believe at the time that this application was filed, that appeal may not have been filed. So
Right.
in staff review, it wasn't an issue at that moment.
Right, but I do agree that this needs to be an amendment of the variance, so we're kind of, this is premature, this particular application, right?
So should I continue with my comments on this application under 7330?
Say it again.
Should I continue with my comments on the on this application under 7330? Not really.
Maybe it's premature. I
Okay.
mean, we don't even know whether it would be okay to suggest another use on the site, because we don't know whether we would find the variance acceptable, the amendment to the variance acceptable, right?
Okay.
Plus, it should be refiled as an amendment to the existing variance.
Yes.
So everything's going to have to be transferred to that
Yeah. Right.
application.
Well, actually, yeah, so procedural, if an amendment is required of the variance, that amendment would be filed, and that would travel as a companion case to the special permit.
And to the extent that the applicant is arguing that this is a public service utility, I would just sort of note that even with our Cornell cases, where the owner of the site is a for-profit entity, that the board generally expects the B finding to be met.
Right. Move on?
Should we, on this case, if we proceed with that case, should we ask them to get us supporting material from FCC
They have.
regarding, no, I didn't see that. Do you have a letter from FCC?
Sorry, finish your sentence, from FCC to what?
Regarding the amount of radiation that's gonna gonna be imposed on the adjacent, because there is a residential immediately next door to that commercial use.
Okay, well, we can hold off on that because we're going to be talking about the 7330, but just to put it in context, there are limitations to the extent that we can ask about those things that have to do with the federal guidelines. In the case of whatever those buildings are, Starrett City or whichever apartment buildings those were, that was quite different because the residents were located right underneath the towers, and there's some very specific guidelines that had to be met, and we were simply asking that, or proof that they were meeting the guidelines. So we would need to see whether there's any kind of guidelines for surrounding neighbors, and that they would have to establish they meet the guidelines, and that's it, as opposed to just simply asking for that, for studies.
And also, just
Right. No, I'm
to
not saying-
distinguish that case, Commissioner, that also was admitting FM radio in addition to the cellular, and I
Yes.
think that was a large
what was
focus
so
of
hot. Yes,
of it being a
correct.
hot site.
Yeah.
They do address the RF signal compliance. They have a letter.
Yeah.
Item number 8, 2019-269BZ, 3425 Rombouts Avenue, the Bronx.
We have proof of initial filing to the community board and elected officials, and also proof of notice of hearing. Community board voted, but it was a majority of the board members voted in favor. Somebody from our office reached out to clarify whether there was a quorum, and I believe there was a quorum.
They determined, according to their bylaws, that that is a vote of approval.
There was, okay. Just a little bit of house cleaning in the statement of facts. The address provided is that of Farmers Boulevard side. Need to correct it. The application needs to clarify what the existing use is on the site. From the Google Street View, it seems it is used for vehicular parking, and most likely these are self-parking. And that the pole was originally constructed for a billboard sign, so they need to provide a DOB approval for the signpost. The applicant states that the telephone exchange or other communication equipment structure are permitted as of right under use group 6D in M zone. However, per DOB's recent ruling, since the existing pole was not originally constructed as a communication equipment structure, the facility is not an as of right use group 6D, and therefore DOB has determined that the existing pole creates a non-accessory radio tower, which is only permitted in M district by special permit. And so it is before us as a radio tower. So just again, couple of errors that I want to point out. On page 2 of statement of findings, need to clarify the existing pole height. It states pole was previously used as was used to mount a billboard sign which extends approximately 23 feet in height above the top of the pole. Whereas I think the drawings indicate something to the height of 75 feet or so. So they need to correct it and indicate the total height per DOB approved plan. The proposed equipment cabinet meter panels that are going to be mounted on the base of the existing panel from the plans that has been provided, it seems it would be very close to the vehicle, the cars that are parked around it. And since since it is being used still as a vehicular parking area, to prevent any contact made by the vehicles or humans, I recommend that they provide a guardrail surrounding the base and stripe the area around it to prevent any maneuverability around the pole. You don't want anybody to damage this equipment. And with regards to the RF compliancy, please provide the antenna site, FCC compliance assessment and report as provided in the Farmers Boulevard site. We don't have that. The application does not provide any information about the maximum permissible exposure for RF level. It just says it meets. Those are my comments.
Anybody else? Yeah, that's what it looks like. All the discontinued arterial highway advertising structures will start to turn into antenna poles.
This is something to keep in mind if any of the variances come for using these signposts for future signage.
They analyzed it for that other one.
Yeah.
Oh, it was another?
First Story Boulevard.
Oh, right.
But
Okay,
to
yes,
the
that's
extent
right.
that a structure is once a billboard, always a billboard, seems like, and you can't convert the use, I mean, we see residential conversions to community facility all the time.
Right. Yes. And, yeah,
And this
interesting
structure
point,
looks
actually.
quite sturdy for
Well-
those mini towers.
Who knows? We saw a structure that looked very sturdy, with a little bit of a nothing added to its top. And then the wind blew one day, and it destroyed a car. Luckily, nobody was in the car. And so, and we saw how much foundation that structure had. Enormous thing, right? So, don't know what looks sturdy.
Okay, maybe that's why it's being reviewed under radio.
Yeah.
Okay, since we're talking about destruction, they submitted structural calculations. These calculations were not reviewed by us. We just filed them for our records. So if these structural calculations need to be reviewed, it should be reviewed by others, not us,
Meaning DOB.
Yeah.
meaning whoever.
Yeah, probably well, who else would review that stuff? But interestingly, in the case of that disastrous site, obviously, there was no structural review to determine that that monopole could handle the size of the sign, the width, breadth, weight, and everything of the sign that was actually before us. And I just have to say, that's just terrifying.
When designing these kind of structures, actually, sometimes it's good, beneficial, and healthy to have a heavy structure attached to the pool rather than a light one.
Okay.
Yes, because that mainly the action comes from the wind,
Yes.
and the stabilizing action is coming from the dead weight of the structure. So if you eliminate a heavy structure that's attached to a pool, and you put something that's light, if you do this, you could overturn it, possibly.
That's what happened.
That's exactly what it was, really.
And you know what? Many of the structural disasters come not because of like lack of review, it's because of lack of design. It's,
Yes.
or if you get a screwed up design initially, there's a chance of 95% that you're gonna get a disaster. The review process, wherever, trust me on this, it's scary. I've seen, once a PE sign and seal, everybody's like, okay, we're good to go.
Right,
And this is not the case. People shouldn't take it for granted.
right, well,
It-
right. So, to your point about not putting a heavy structure and then there's a puff of wind, these cellular structures, right, they're kind of, there's nothing much to them, right? These little antennae and all that, they don't weigh very much. That monopole that was installed probably to support a double-faced sign facing an arterial was much heavier. So how do we know we're not setting up something that's the same issue?
I would say for a structure like a sign, the stability doesn't mainly come from just the weight. Most of the time, we need to either put like a really big foundation to make sure that it's heavy enough to be stable, not any wind can just make it overturn. Or even if it's expensive to put 10 feet thick mat for that large diameter pool, you could just put like 2 or 3 feet thick thing and then put tie down anchors. We put like steel cables deep into ground and we grout these to make sure that they bond
Yeah.
to the surrounding soil, and then you just pull them
Yeah,
and close, put like a net,
right,
conical net that make sure that you usually you have something pushing this down. So when wind hits, it's not the dead weight of the sign or the dead weight of the pool that makes this stable. It's the push down from the tie down angle.
yeah. But that's not the part that failed on the Bartow sign, right? It failed way up at the top and just pulled right off.
Wow.
The base is intact. Oh, you haven't seen it?
The
Oh, we have
No,
to
I
show you
have
that
not.
video.
It's
It
like
is
the kite
breathtaking.
effect.
What?
It's like the kite effect. You know,
Yes.
like a kite is so light, it just gets buffeted by the wind. And so it's like that thing on top, it was so light.
Yes. And, yeah.
Yeah, wind force in this country. I recall when I first came here, I was designing something for wind force, and the wind force was like magnificent. I was, oh my God, these people design for wind. How about earthquakes? And then actually in like a week, and thanks God I got that. In like a week, I was by the waterfront in Bayeux, and I was looking at some construction, and it was like very windy. On that date, I realized that yes, wind force should be seriously considered here. It's a scary, and most of the high-rise actually in Manhattan, I hear from the structural folks that the lateral design is governed mainly by wind, not the earthquake force, well, because the seismic action in New York is not that significant.
So far.
But we didn't review the structural for this case, so.
Okay. All right.
Should we move on?
Anything else on this one? No concerns by anybody? Near a highway, at least, industrial.
Item number 9, 2017-317BZ, 1693 Flatbush Avenue, Brooklyn.
So we have proof of filing to community board and elected official, and proof of notice of hearing. Committee board voted in favor, 36 in favor, 4 opposed, 1 abstained, with modification, and the condition is that the property be well lit and maintained at all times. This is an existing vacant interior irregular triangle-shaped lot fronting on Flatbush Avenue. This site had previously, dating back to 1923, had a gasoline station, and which was in operation till 1968. Then it was abandoned not abandoned, the use was, it was stopped being used as a gas station, and there was a one-story building there that was demolished, and after that it has been used as auto sales and used car rental space. The applicant states that there are 4 supposedly underground storage tanks still. They're not sure about it. This is an application seeking waivers for FAR, height and setback, and rear yard, right?
What's crazy is the USDs...
Actually parking, not rear yard, parking.
Yeah. What's crazy is the USDs were, the use as a gas station ended in 1968. This idea that the USDs are still underground, I find odd.
They were, I seem to remember from my days at HPD, we had inherited some sites, and there were some of these older sites, they were USDs.
Still had the USDs.
Yeah. And in those cases, I don't know, in some cases, we were allowed to pump concrete into it.
Right, you filled them in.
Yeah. What is it called?
Slurring.
Yeah. And then I don't know, then probably repurpose the site or do whatever it is. So that was one of the questions I had as to what is the extent of the nature of the cleanup that is required on the site, because the proposed use is a commercial use, and we know from various BSA applications, the nature and the extent of the use varies based on the kind of use that is being proposed. So I'm sure Commissioner Shetta has a lot of comments on that one. This is... the applicant is stating that this is an area where 1.65 FAR is permitted because it's a predominantly built up. They just need to, again, provide a justification. I think, just looking at it, I think it is, because these were all mostly from the 1920s and 1930s, so they would qualify, but they need to provide a narrative and clarify that. Revise the zoning chart and fill in all the information regarding FAR for both residential community facility and bulk regulations, and that the bulk regulation, because the bulk regulations differ for the community facility use and for the commercial use. And reason I'm saying that is the applicant has proposed an as-of-right scenario, which is a daycare facility, and so that's why we should have the bulk regulations for both as-of-right residential, community facility, and One question I had was, is there a specific end user identified for the commercial space? It seems like a location for a medical office space more than just an office space. Need to provide a visual and possibly a noise buffer along the rear lot line, buffering the proposed stacked vehicles from the abutting residential use. They're proposing 18 parking spaces on stackers on the ground floor, and the roof over the ground floor parking doesn't extend all the way to the rear lot line. There's a little bit of like a opening that is provided, and I'm not sure why the parking space is open partially in the rear and not covered up, because it would not be counted in the zoning floor area since it's an accessory parking space, which is located below the height of 23 feet. And also the plan needs to show required bicycle parking area. The applicant has also provided a typical as-of-right site that is 44 foot wide by 100 foot deep to show the comparison and the hardship between the as-of-right and a typical as-of-right. In the as-of-right daycare, the floor area plan, there is a preparation room and a storage area shown on the second floor plan and the third floor plan, whereas in the typical as-of-right, that's not shown. So there is a little bit of a programmatic discrepancy between the as-of-right and the the typical. So they just need to, maybe it's a mistake, or maybe it's not needed, it's not clear. So they just need to provide a narrative as to why there is a difference. And the class size in the as-of-right is 513 square feet and 498 compared to the typical, which is 680 and 610 square feet. So there you do see the difference between a typical site with a daycare configuration versus an as-of-right. But however, if you don't need those other spaces like the preparation room and the storage room, maybe the class size in the as-of-right may increase, but it may not increase to the size that is shown in the typical. The applicant needs to go through each of the waiver that is being requested and justify why each one is needed. For example, the statement does not discuss why a parking waiver is needed. Also need to show the demand and supply analysis of the parking reduction and how the shortfall would be met off-site. I was okay with the proposal in terms of if you go through the 5 findings, I believe the applicant meets a uniqueness. There are very few sites that are irregular in shape, and this is the only vacant site that is irregular and has not been used. I had some questions regards to the financial. The financial analysis estimates no revenue from the parking. Is the parking then only accessory to the occupants of the building and is free of charge? They need to provide more clarity about the utilization and operation and the operating cost associated with this parking facility, because it will have to be a valet parking since it's stacker. And it's my understanding, depending on the use, the extent of the cleanup would vary. So is the scope of the cleanup consistent with the proposed uses?
They didn't talk about that at all. The
Right, it's
extent,
the same amount.
the extent, they mentioned nothing about it. The extent is the entire site. That's what he said.
Okay.
Actually, with some double tipping on that. The excavation is, like disposal is considered twice in the cleanup and in the construction, so.
Yeah, I think from a neighborhood context, I think this use is appropriate. The build form seems to be within the range, because the building ranges in this area anywhere from 2 stories to 7 stories, even in the R5 district. I'm not even looking at the R6 or anything. So given the mix of uses and the building typology, the build forms would be okay. My own question is this the amount of FAR adequate, and that would fall on the financial?
Adequate
No,
or excessive?
It's excessive, sorry,
Excessive.
that's what I'm sorry, it's excessive. And they also need to provide a title search to show that the site was owned separately from the abutting lot since 1961. That's all.
I just wanna, oh, for me, I think that the request, the FAR request is excessive unless, so far I haven't seen that that's the real need, and that it should be a lesser variance scenario that includes a full medical building. So in other words, don't mix the commercial and the medical or some other kind of use, make the whole building a community facility use, so therefore no use waiver arguably would be needed, and you can use medical office or something else that's like that.
You don't need a use waiver. It's a C2.
Oh, it's C2?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry. So make the whole, no, but I think it's because the commercial use
Is only
is
allowed
only
a-
one FAR, and community facility is 2 FAR, so that was kind of why. But the main issue is that you could reduce, just eliminate the requirements for the setbacks. So the lesser variance would be no setbacks, and say 2 FAR, so that you're maxing out your allowable floor area, and see how that runs, as opposed to an increase. Any
I think those were.
Commissioner Brown, you want?
I'm going to let Commissioner Sheta speak first.
Okay, first of all, regarding the size of the variance, I believe it's too much. Actually, I would like summarize this case in 4 words. Too much unsupported, too much comma unsupported. I explain. Too much unsupported means too much information or claims that are not unsupported
That are not supported.
Yes, that are not supported in that case. Such as the cleanup. It's about $500,000 for cleanup, which is actually one of the 2 pillars that are driving this variance. This variance is based on 2 pillars: cleanup and the irregularity of the site. The cleanup, 4 tanks, where? Nothing. How deep? I don't know. What size? I don't know. Could be decommissioned by being filled. I don't know. I scoured the phase 2, and it's all about this need to be done later, this need to be done later, this need to be done later. So back to square one again. If you're basing a variance on cleanup, phase 2 should be final, the RAP should be final, and it should be clear that we have this issue, the size of the issue is this, the effort needed to mitigate this issue is this, like the extent of the cleanup is we're gonna need to dig a 10 by 10 spot here down to 10 feet. East of the site, we're gonna dig 15 by 20, 15 feet deep. We're gonna need this amount of dewatering. We're gonna need this amount of SOE. But nothing in this application that's working that way. It's just, the cleanup is boom, 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 just numbers. What is the support for these numbers? I have no idea. Again, I said maybe in phase 2, I could find some answers. Honestly, I went to phase 2 and I looked at the exceedance. When you do an environmental investigation, again, you go drill borings, you take samples, you send them for environmental testing and screening, and the results come back, and you compare the results, the amount of different contaminants that you found in these samples. You compare these two, either the unrestricted use or the restricted use, based on the kind of use you want to put at that site. And if you have exceedances, then you start talking about, oh, we have a problem, we need to mitigate this. How can we mitigate it? We need to clean up. We need probably to do some grouting. If I'm working for a developer, usually I try to squeeze the cleanup scope as much as I can to minimize the cost for the cleanup. But again, if I'm coming to the BSA with a case, I'll try the opposite, to make a case to the BSA that I have a big issue, you have to compensate me for this. I believe this is what is done in this application. Too many claims, unsupported. And in addition to this, the kind of cost that's developed, the unit prices, again, exaggerated. quantities are more than the drawings indicate. The scope of the cleanup and the cost estimate for the cleanup is not that clear. Disposal, for example, they presume that they're gonna excavate the entire site, and this excavation is what we call it environmental excavation. When you have a site like this and you have an environmental issue, step one is to come up with a scope for the cleanup. So let's say the site is 100 by 100. I have a 10 by 10 spot that need to be cleaned up. This 10 by 10 spot, we call this environmental excavation. So it need to be excavated under certain supervision by an environmental engineer. It needs certain precautions, and then the disposal of the material is not like you're digging a clean site and you're just disposing this material. What happened on this case is they assumed that the entire excavation for the entire site is environmental excavation, which I can see in phase 2 report based on the exceedances in the environmental samples. Some slight exceedances at some locations in the groundwater samples and in the soil samples that do not indicate that the entire site need to be environmentally excavated. And then, considering the disposal at $85 per cubic yard or ton, I don't recall, but when you look at the construction cost, again, the site is excavated and then it's gonna be disposed at $30 a cubic yard or something like. So it's like, it's considered here and considered there.
Okay. so
Yes,
we-
this is one of the issues.
I have a question.
Yeah.
In this case, the size, this is a 4,000 square foot site and a very irregular site. So how does one contain the excavation in a small area? I guess what I'm getting, I mean, when you have a large site, you can contain the excavation area that is contaminated from the large area. In this case, it being a 4,000 square foot site, an underground storage tank would occupy a good chunk of the area, and if it is doing that, wouldn't most of the site almost
That's
result
not
in it?
mentioned. The size of the tank is not mentioned in the submission. I haven't seen it.
No,
will
I haven't
say.
seen it either.
Yeah, I haven't seen the size of the tank. I haven't seen, yes, just 4 tanks.
Or where they are.
Where, how deep, how big, nothing. So I presume that they are not covering the entire site. Usually, if you have a gas station, the tanks cover probably 25% of the footprint. It's not 100%. And even if they are covering 100%, and the testing is not indicating that, you could have 10 tanks on a site, but they are intact, they are not leaking, so you don't have an environmental issue. But on another site, you could have 1 tank, but it's leaking, and you have contamination all over the site.
Yeah.
So this is not explained in this case, and this is actually what we're trying to get people to do since 2 years. If you're coming with a case, again, it's similar to the PCE case. Make your case clear. Do not count on an assumption that, you know what, they're gonna get bored and they're gonna give you something at the end. It's not gonna happen. And again, when we grant something based on environmental acts, it's gonna be conditioned on that. And we have to get a certification after the construction, saying that what we approved has been followed and implemented. And if this doesn't happen, if we don't get this certification or the certification says something else, our grant could be reversed. That simple. So on the environmental side here, I haven't seen a case. They need to make their case clear. On the other side, for the irregularity, I believe the site is big enough. And if you look at the as-of-right, you could, I'm not an architect, but I believe architectural-wise, you could create some sort of like a built-over area within that site with which the irregularity is not imposing, I would say, any hardship. Or if there is a hardship, it's very slight. If you actually engineer the outlines of the building within the lot, this lot is like a triangle, but if you stay away from the apex, in the back and you build on the front, you could actually get rid of the hardship that's associated with the irregularity. Again, the trick of submitting rectangular side and an equivalent triangular or irregular side and an equivalent rectangular side, it's not gonna fly. Because the way people play it is they just play with the unit prices and the numbers to make us feel like, oh, you see the difference between the irregular side and the rectangular side? It's huge. Actually, it's not. It's just made up in the unit prices in the construction cost estimate. If you have an irregular site that's imposing hardship, it should be architectural. It should be on the architectural side. You cannot design, you cannot benefit actually from the entire space of this site. But if you have a site that's rectangular and you're gonna build 25% or so of that site, why just you don't avoid building in the narrow areas, come to the front, architecturally you don't have a problem. Construction-wise, there is no difference between somebody who's gonna put 1 cubic yard of reinforced concrete in a rectangular site or in a triangular site. Nothing. It's if I wanna contract somebody to build a steel structure or a concrete structure, he's not gonna come and say, yeah, your lot is rectangular or triangular, so it's gonna be tough to build. No, these days, people build with instruments. It's not like 50 years ago when we used to build with tapes and it take that, like the people more time to offset things, to put things on the ground. These days, people just get the instrument, program it in the office and just go to the field and boom, 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 you get it done. So for a rectangular site, it could take like an hour. For a triangular site, probably it's gonna take like an hour too. So the difference that's made up in construction cost when comparing rectangular versus triangular or irregular, it's not convincing to me. So I believe we're still far away from like judging whether the ask, of course, no doubt, I believe the ask is too much. And I'm not sure even if there is a case there, it's gonna depend on the feedback on the environmental side.
Thank you.
So I have some financial questions, basically, that start with the site value. If you're contemplating a retail office building, then the site value should be valued at the 1.0 FAR. That's actually the max FAR for commercial. There's no need to consider that this site is trading on its residential floor area or its community facility floor areas. So that should be redone, and it should be redone using the commercial comparables, not residential comparables, and not asking prices. The base construction costs between the as-of-right and the typical as-of-right, they differ by, the typical as-of-right is $35 a square foot cheaper to construct, but they really don't, and this isn't including the premium costs, but they don't detail why, and they should give us some kind of a detail. They give us the McQuilkin listing, but they really should turn that into a narrative explaining the differences. And basically, that's all I have about the financials. I had one question about the uniqueness finding. When they talk about their lot study, they're saying that this is one of 8 lots that have an irregular triangular shape, and it's the only vacant one. And then they talk about 4 of the 7 lots and what they have on it, but what about the other 3 lots? They don't talk about that. They talk about the uniqueness constraining the available floor plate of a new building, but I'm inclined to look at this like Commissioner Shetta, because it is so wide and it enjoys so much frontage. I'm not sure how much of the floor plate is actually constrained. They talk about how the floor plate limits the ability to put parking in the cellar because you have to have a ramp, and that doesn't yield enough space for a turning radius, which means that either they wouldn't be able to put in parking, or that in the proposed, they have the parking on the first floor. But why can't you use an elevator? And we've seen parking being carved into much smaller spaces, so I'm not sure I agree with that. There happen to be DOB-approved plans for an as-of-right project here, so what is the story with that, if there's an as-of-right project? What's there?
That's the as-of-right daycare.
So
Yeah.
if you went so far as to get DOB-approved plans for this project, why now are you coming here for a variance?
And just on secret, they have the sign-offs.
They have all the sign-off?
That's what Tracy says. They have all
Well,
the
we don't
sign-offs.
have, what hazmat's premature because we don't know, we don't know enough, right?
I have a question actually regarding the DOB approved plans. Chair, you're an architect. Is it possible that an architect sign and seal SOE drawings? Is that something that's permitted?
An architect is a professional, I don't know, actually don't know that. Why, is that what you saw? SOE
Yes,
signed
the
by the
SOE
architect?
drawings are actually sealed and signed by the architect. It says registered architect.
I don't,
I'm okay with that, if DOB is okay with that.
yeah, I don't know that DOB discriminates, but I really, I don't know.
But one of the things I can see that there is no embedment for the SOE wall, and I don't know why nobody has raised an issue with that. If you look at the DOB approved plans, page 16. That's what I was talking about like half an hour ago, when somebody signed and sealed, everybody's like,
Right, well,
back
anybody
off.
can, that's the thing, they take the liability if they don't
Yeah.
have any skills, I mean, because it's the other thing. Let's just say it only needs to be an engineer, but the engineer has no background in the subject and signs and seals it. Same issue, right?
If you look at the
So-
typical shoring detail number 3,
Mm-hmm.
you see the wall, it's right and left, and then you have some braces. The wall actually, it cannot be on top of the excavation like this. It need to have some embedment inside. Otherwise, soil can just come and flow underneath the tip of the wall, and then you start having ground loss right and left. So it's, and this is actually in the NAFAC manual, and should be, if somebody designed this like that, it's his sign and seal, I don't know.
So it sounds like this application, because of it's not really a triangle, it's more like a trapezoid, right? So
Yeah,
it's
it has
it's a
little-
large,
yeah.
wide trapezoid where the rear yard can't be built anyway, right? So it's forcing you to build your floor area forward with the zoning. So outside of the area, like the apex. So,
Which helps actually getting rid of the hardship
Right.
that's created because of the shape of the lot.
right, so then, and we had a case like this very recently, then you're resting solely on whether the contamination
Is in the front.
is what, in the front.
Yeah.
And solely on whether it rises to the level of giving you some kind of a waiver, right? And so that sort of underscores that what they're asking for, which is almost 4 times the allowable, is anywhere close to what would be an acceptable range of variance, right? And but, this is like the ongoing theme with, with low floor areas for commercial uses, right? So that's the thing, when your floor areas are too low for the commercial uses and too low to make it them viable uses, and then they come to us for a variance because they can't make it a viable commercial use because of the restrictions on that. I mean, it's not an M11, but it's usually, that's what we see in the M11s, right? There's only one FAR to play with, you don't get more than that, and they come to us and say, essentially, fix the zoning district, because it's making it impossible for us to have a viable investment. But it's the zoning district that's doing
They try their best to like prove their case. If you keep like digging into these kind of submissions, you're gonna find holes like that big. If you look at the foundation that they submitted that's associated with the proposed mat foundation 2 feet thick. Okay, if you look at the approved plans from the DOB, the footing is 3 by 3. The building that's submitted to the DOB is 3-story building. The area of the footing is 3 times 3, it's 9.
Right.
So 9 could hold 3-story building. However, if the building is 5, then instead of 9, let's double it. It's probably 20. So you need like 4.5 by 4.5 footing. But in the submission, it's a mat foundation, 2 feet thick. This footing is probably like 18-inch thick for the as of right, because they want to prove that the as of right is just there. We're gonna just make it feasible by this as of right. It's a mat foundation, 2+ feet thick, and that's what we need. So people should stop wasting their time by submitting stuff like that. It's not flying, guys.
Yeah. Okay, good. Any, Commissioner?
No, I'll just summarize, I don't want to be repetitive. I do see that this may be a unique property, but I think their hardship needs to be flushed out. I certainly don't see any support for this level of variance, and I also defer to Commissioner Ali Brown and Commissioner Shetta for the financials and the structurals.
I just want to go back to one question that was raised by Commissioner Otley regarding the other sites. They provided, the applicant has provided a chart, I think it's kind of buried in all the submissions, and in that, the remaining 4 sites are all mixed residential and community facility uses.
They should put that into the statement of
Right,
facts
I
and
agree with you.
findings.
I agree with you. Actually,
Yeah.
they should provide this table into the statement of findings. It just makes it easier rather than having to refer to this table.
Sure.
Yeah. And also, they should provide a diagram of the surrounding use and the FAR, because most of these buildings along Flatbush are overbuilt. So they should provide that.
Okay, this concludes the public hearing for January 27th, the public review session, for January 27th, 2020.